Welcome. Hello, hello. This is the live stream for December 28th, 2016. And I'm trying something new tonight. I am going to stand up because I cannot handle sitting for the whole length of a normal live stream. So we're going to see how well it works. And I don't even know. Like I didn't even think about the camera and everything else. And like there's a learning curve to everything. I don't know why I don't anticipate that. It's frustrating, whatever. So I'm going to try really hard to not like rock back and forth and to not be like uncomfortably close to the camera or anything. So call me out if I start doing weird stuff. Nightingale calls first. Katrina calls second. Hi, guys. Hi, Evie. Helene is here. Roberta. How are you guys? How was your holiday? Hi, Diana. Sideways on Highways is here. Tony is here. Evie says start dancing. Yeah. That's my dance. So I guess for those of you that are new here, I don't normally dance. I promise. So don't leave. My name is Dana, and this is my YouTube channel. It's called Thrive After Abuse, and we meet every Wednesday night for I don't know, 2 hours, 3 hours ish, and just people ask questions, they answer questions. There's no such thing as a basic question or a dumb question or a wrong question or anything. So as long as you're not a creeper or a weirdo or like a troll, you're warmly welcomed here. And this is all about just kind of opening up conversation about problematic relationships, I think would be putting it mildly. Toxic relationships, narcissistic relationships, narcissistically abusive relationships, and between all different types of people. So between, boyfriends and girlfriends and girlfriends and boyfriends and married couples and gay couples and parents and children and you name it. So, okay. Hi, Anthony. What can we help you with? Is there anything in particular, or are you here to just kind of feel all of this out? Either way is totally fine, no pressure. just so you know. Cecilia says, "Hey y'all, so glad this is happening this week." So I am too. Whenever I go visit my mom, she has terrible internet at her place, and I can't live stream from there. It doesn't work. So so Anita says, "Hi Dana, thank you for your videos. They help me a lot. I'm going through a separation right now. I hope I make it." That last sentence there really concerns me, and I guess I don't want to just hope that you make it. Please know that many of your best days are still ahead of you. Like they really, really are. And separation, divorce, breaking up, it's never easy, and it's always intensely emotional, even if the relationship is good. But when you have a narcissistic person, a toxic person, kind of whatever, by whatever name you want to call them, it can be incredibly difficult. I would encourage you to try to prepare yourself emotionally as much as possible for that before you need to. So, if you're, I would encourage you to possibly consider getting into some support groups to try to kind of circle your wagons and think about what do you have in your corner, what can help you weather this storm and get through it to where you're not hanging on to hope that you're going to make it through, that you can actually get through this. Prepare yourself enough ahead of time to where you have the confidence and the assuredness that you're like, you know what? Yes, I'm going through this, but this too shall pass, and I'm going to develop like a better vision for myself. And that's what I'm going to steer into. I'm going to take all of this and I'm really going to make it work for me as much as I humanly can. That's how you start reclaiming your power and control and really rebuilding a life that you are just like wildly in love with. That might sound really easier said than done or really intense, but it's very true. It's just one step at a time, one day at a time. Okay, Anthony says, my husband has coerced me into marrying him earlier this year, and we've been together 8 years. I wish I could leave him, but his narcissism and passive aggressiveness doesn't help. No, it definitely doesn't. So, you know, if you're about a year into it and you're like, you know what, this is highly problematic. This is not working for me at all. And this person, you know, they lack empathy, they lack remorse, they're not wanting to sincerely work towards any type of, you know, positive future together. You know, if he's continuing to treat you with a lack of dignity and a lack of respect, that's hands down a huge problem. So I would encourage you, again, knowing this, anticipation is our number one tool. So with abusive people, isolation is theirs. That's their number one tool in their toolkit. And they isolate their targets in a wide variety of ways. They do it through love bombing. They do it through moving a person physically away to possibly a different city, a different state, a different country, having them quit their jobs. They isolate them just across the board. They don't want them to work, or they want them to work so much that they have no life outside of work. They can isolate them through like a smear campaign where everybody thinks that they're the problem instead of the true abusive person. So knowing kind of what you're up against, okay, that's their thing. Like isolation is their number one tool. So if ours is anticipation, you know him best. Okay, so what's gonna, you know, kind of what do you think his next moves are gonna be? How does he normally manipulate you with that passive aggressiveness? And then how can you prepare yourself like emotionally and physically and financially in order to get yourself to a place where you can stay safe and sane? And then try to reverse engineer it from there as much as you can. But I'm really sorry that you're going through this. And again, I encourage everybody, join a handful of different support groups out there. Because I think, you know, every group resonates with the person differently. And it can really be a huge benefit to just have a bunch of people that have been there, done that, or that are going through it to help you as you're going through this situation in your life. Anthony says, he used leverage against me by adopting my nephew in order to marry him. It's right. And that kind of thing. So they will often kind of part two of that. So then isolation's number one, and then trapping a person. So they often trap a person by either getting pregnant or getting their partner pregnant or doing something major, like adopting a child, adopting a pet, buying a house, you know, moving far away, having the partner quit their job. And a lot of people I've come across where they're like, you know what, this person had some somewhat problematic behavior, but it wasn't until they had a baby or it wasn't until they bought a really expensive home that their behavior really changed. And that's often what it is that they got comfortable because they felt that they really had a lot of leverage and a lot of power and control over their partner. And I'm so sorry that your nephew is involved in all of this as well. He says, I need to get out of this abusive relationship, but he won't let me. Yes. Yes. And he says, I can't understand him. There's a lot to it, too much detail, but that's the short version. So, okay, right there, you're saying, I can't understand him. No, none of us can, because, well, for starters, we're not in their mind. But outside of that, their behavior is oftentimes not logical, and it's not rational. It's very impulsive. It's whatever they want in the moment, or whatever they feel that they need to do in order to get and keep power and control over their target. And so that's continually shifting as their manipulations need to continually shift, which is why you can't understand them, because they're actively trying to not be understood. I think this is one of the things a lot of people, myself included, really struggle with, because we tend to think everybody's solutions oriented, right? Like every relationship can be fixed just given enough communication. And that's not the case when you're dealing with a highly manipulative person, because it isn't that me and you dynamic, because that's what's needed in a relationship, right? It's that me and you. When you're dealing with an emotional manipulator, their mindset is very much me versus you. And communication can't fix that, because it's the mindset that's a problem. Communication's not the problem. Their mindset's the problem. And if you've got somebody that's actively trying to work against you, then it's not going to work. So no, he's not going to be okay with you leaving ever. That's the personality style that you're dealing with, because then they lose power and control. And that's not the name of the game. Their whole thing is to get and keep power and control. So you're going to have to try to figure out a way to leave in a way that's going to keep you, and this oftentimes requires some planning. If you're not in immediate harm's way, if you have time to actually do some planning about it, to not let him know. Remember, like, you're playing a game. You're playing a game. This is not a relationship. Like, you're playing a game. So trying to anticipate, like, what do you need to do in order to be able to untangle yourself from this situation and leave. So this is often referred to as having what's called a safety plan, where you take into account, okay, how can I start, separating finances? How can I start getting our names off, getting your name like off of different things? How can I, start putting money aside? How can you getting credit reports, getting copies of important papers, like these kinds of things, getting your ducks in a row. So when you do leave, you've got a plan. And having a plan is going to give you a lot more peace of mind as well, because it's really hard to jump if we don't know what we're jumping to. And if you can really kind of flesh out what some of your options are, even if they're not like ideal, but just giving yourself some options is going to help you think clearer, so you can start thinking like, okay, this is a viable option. This is maybe like option number 1, and then this one's like option number 17 on the list. And then you can start going through and then just kind of implementing different pieces of your plan as need be. So Lisa says, I've been married, 27 years to a covert narcissist, and I didn't know it. He had me believe we were selling our family home to have our retirement home built. Once escrow closed, he said he wanted a divorce. Wow. Wow. I'm so sorry. What a shock. What a shock. Wild Tiger says, hello, my name is Lolita. I'm new to the chat. I wanted to say thank you. The site saved me 10 months ago. Thank you. You are so very, very welcome. I'm glad that the videos could help, that the all of this, that all of this can help somebody else. That's just awesome. Like, that's just awesome to hear. Oh gosh, that's such a great. Okay, let me answer or discuss Anthony's comment here, and then we're going to go back a little bit and talk about M. Olson's question, because that's a good one. Anthony says, but I think not being able to understand him is prolonging things for me to move on with my life. Oh boy, Anthony, I hear ya. I think everybody goes, I think that's a very normal stage in healing, is trying to understand what on earth you're dealing with. And a lot of people, once they start coming across certain concepts like, narcissism or covert narcissism or silent treatment or projection or triangulation, once they start understanding things, it's like this light goes on, like, oh my gosh, they start seeing things clearly for the first time, and they become, again, myself included, like obsessed with trying to understand who this person is, what they're about, what they're thinking, why, like that's the biggest question, right? And again, very, very normal. A lot of people do tend to spend, a handful of months in that, like, I call it like research, like that research phase of just figuring out, because I think so many of us, right, we tend to go through life thinking that other people are like us. Makes total sense. And so the problem is other people are not like us. And so using ourselves as a baseline for how other people are is highly problematic, especially when you're dealing with somebody that is highly narcissistic and highly problematic, because they're just not like us. And because they're so not like us, we will never understand that. They're just, their thought process, everything is wired very, very differently than ours. It's kind of like I was talking about earlier. Our mindset is that of cooperation. It's that solutions oriented. It's me and you. It's working towards a common goal. The goal is to be happy and to have a happy future together and to be able to work as a team. When you're dealing with a person that's on that narcissistic side of the spectrum, where they're like problematically narcissistic, wherever they fall in there, as far as problematically narcissistic goes, it's all about them. And that's like, it doesn't make sense to us because it's all about them and their wants and their needs. And it just changes from moment to moment. It's not you. It's not you. There's nothing that you can do. I'm just saying this, I think, because it can be helpful to just know his behavior is a reflection of him. It's not a reflection of you. There's nothing that you can do to change him. And begging, pleading, screaming, praying, all of these things, they don't move the needle on change, because he has to want to change. He has to want to be understood. And that's the hardest thing when you're dealing with somebody that has that, that real like narcissistic bend in their personality, is they don't want to be understood, because then it would ruin the game, because it's all about power and control. So it's very much that me versus you mindset. And it can be crazy making for you, for any of us, to try to understand, to try to make logical sense out of illogical behavior, because that's basically what it is. And it doesn't make any sense to us, and it never will. And that's probably a good thing, because I don't know if I really want to be able to just anticipate that deeply about like a disturbed thought process. Okay, M. Olson asks, do you have any advice on reprogramming your mind in a healthy way after having a narcissistic mother and healing the child within? I need help with that. Did you read the book? or see the video that I did on the book, Healing the Child Within. It was a fantastic book, by the way. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend it. It's a good place to start. As far as reprogramming your mind, that's such a big question. And it's such an important question. I think there's so many different ways in which like our minds, our conscious minds and our subconscious minds need to be programmed, especially after dealing or after having a narcissistic parent, because it skews everything. Like what, it skews a person's concept of what's workable behavior versus deal breaker behavior. It skews a person's concept of what healthy boundaries are and what unhealthy boundaries are. It skews a person's concept of, what abuse is and like what, normal or healthy behavior is. It really skews a person's concept of self-image and who they are and how they feel. Because oftentimes children of narcissists they're not entitled to have their feelings, right? And so a lot of people struggle with, I think women, anger, like we're just talking like basic, gender norms here. Anger tends to be a more socially acceptable emotion for men to display, and depression and sadness tends to be more of an emotionally appropriate emotion for women to display. And of course, both men and women have a much wider range of emotion than that. But oftentimes they're very, very disconnected from that. So they tend to either feel like, angry, anxious, depressed, or numb. Tends to kind of be about it. And so learning to get back in touch with your emotions, learning who you are. I mean, that's the struggle in all of this, but I will also tell you it's the gift in all of this, because I don't think that like normal people ever stop to they never tend to experience enough pain in life where that they have to stop and systematically question every single thing in their life. The level of introspection that comes during this healing process after a narcissistic relationship, where you are so turning inward and you're asking yourself about your emotions and you're asking yourself about, how do I really feel about this? Like, what do I really want? Who am I? And continuing, and that can be, it can be such an overwhelming process and a very discouraging process. And I think at times for many people, it can lead them close to like emotional collapse, because it's intense to be like, I'm 39 years old. Like, how do I not know major parts of who I am? And like, that's just, it's weird. It's weird to feel lost within yourself like that. But if you can start going through, so I talk about this a lot on the live streams. Well, let me start with the concept of keeping it simple here. Asking yourself, what gives you energy? Like, what makes you feel juiced and excited and just, yes, you're alive, you're here, like this excites you. What gives you energy? And then on the opposite of that, what takes energy from you? What drains you? What exhausts you and depresses you? And what do you avoid? That can be a really good start right there to kind of reprogramming your mind, because it's not even hard. It's like a person's life is not going to work until they know who they are. It's so all about being in touch. It's self-awareness and being who you are. And so when a person, again, when they've had a narcissistic parent, who they are has been ground down. And so it's like we get cheated out of truly discovering, who are you, and what are you good at and what are you bad at, and what are your likes and what are your dislikes. And so just kind of exploring exploring all that. As far as other parts of changing your mindset, paying attention to your self-talk. So, and that's weird if you've never done that before, like to start paying attention to what are you telling yourself? Do you look in the mirror and call yourself names? Do you belittle or abuse yourself? And if so, whose voice is that really, right? And affirmations can be amazing. Like they can really, really, really go far to help a person like reprogram their concept of self. There's a lot of different affirmations videos on YouTube that if you look on YouTube on like guided imagery or affirmations and start going through those, that can be incredibly powerful. Strangely enough, I met a woman at the airport the other day, and she was she was coming to my city in Michigan to meet her mother who had put her up for adoption 38 years ago. And it was like this really intense story, and kind of long story short, she'd been in a series of abusive relationships. She really grew up, she was adopted by a family who was incredibly abusive, and she grew up feeling she was also a product of rape, which is why her mother gave her up for adoption. And so it was just like this really intense conversation with a total stranger. And so I ended up telling her kind of, what I do and everything. And she was saying one of the things that really helped her was she had taped on her bathroom mirror like a piece of paper, and every day she would write one nice thing about herself, like one thing that she liked, like her smile or her skin or her taste in clothes. And she said that was in the challenge for her was to write 100 things that she liked about herself. And she said she was fine like the first week, but then it got really, really tough. And you can't use duplicates. Like you have to use a new one every single time. And that really helped her to explore, what she really did like about herself. And then also to explore kind of where the stuff was coming from and why she didn't like certain aspects of herself. It was incredibly insightful for her. So I think that I really liked that. I thought that was good. A good way to go about it. So it's seriously, it's a day by day, kind of moment by moment type thing with reprogramming your mind. But the cool thing with that is it compounds on itself. Like it's kind of that whole cliche, like there is no such thing as small change. It's really true. It's because change, it stacks upon itself. So, just moving in the right direction is the right direction. That momentum will start building. It's like a snowball that starts rolling down a mountain, and then it just becomes like this, massive like avalanche kind of a thing. It's very much the same way. I hope that helps. Yeah, Helene says, I keep moving 2 steps forward and 1 step back. The first time I have maintained no contact this long in 3 years. Hey, it's awesome. Good for you. I feel strong right now, but days like yesterday, I couldn't get out of bed. Keep moving forward. Yes, well, and that's all part of it. That's all part of anything is, people tend to think that moving forward is a straight line, and oftentimes it's not. Moving forward with anything is very rarely a clean, smooth, straight line. It's messy, and it's okay. Like it's okay. You're gonna have some down days. You're gonna have some days where you get caught up in nostalgia, or you hear a song and it reminds you of them, and these things happen, and all we can do is to try to anticipate those down days as much as possible. So when they do hit, they don't totally throw us off balance to where we go running back to that person. So, some things that I would recommend would be, the support group, but doing things that are fun, taking time to do things that you enjoy, watching movies all day long. Like if you have a day where you can just have, a movie day, stuff like that. Doing your nails if you like to do stuff like that, taking a hot bath, doing a mud mask, like tripling up on your self-care, because once you get used to really feeling good, and I would even say too, like articulating it to yourself. So if you're like doing a mud mask, to tell yourself, like, I am giving myself a mud mask because I matter, I have value, and I enjoy this. This makes me feel good. And this is me taking time for me because I love myself and I matter. As weird as that might feel to say, but telling yourself that, and even better, like telling yourself that in the mirror. So where you're looking in your own eyes and you're trying to convince yourself that you matter. You matter. And you're enough just the way you are. There is so much right with you. And just reminding yourself of that. Feeling good and acknowledging what it feels like to feel good. I think, again, a lot of people, myself included, and understandably so, when they get out of these kinds of relationships, they feel like their world is blown apart. And they do. They're like, you know what? I feel like I'm just going to lay in bed and I'm just going to, like, you feel like the chair has been kicked out from underneath you. And so it's incredibly intense. And people oftentimes, it's kind of like a wounded animal, like that wants to just be alone. And they kind of often, for me, and I think for a lot of people, tell themselves, well, I'll get back into life. I'll be happy once I heal from this. But the reality is there is no line in the sand where like you're not okay one day and then you're totally okay the next day. Like healing, it's like when you scrape, like when you're a kid and you're learning to ride a bike and you fall really, really hard and like you really tear up your knee. It's like that. And so the healing starts immediately. Like it starts immediately as soon as you get up off the ground and you get the gunk out of your knee, that healing starts. And we can't see it right away, but it's happening. All of that infection and inflammation and pain and, then it starts, like, if it's oozing and gross, and once all that stuff gets cleaned out of there and then the healing starts happening, we can slowly start seeing it. It's the same thing healing emotionally. It takes time. You are healing. Like in every moment, in every minute of every hour of every single day, you are truly healing. It's hard for us to see because like you're living it, but to try to remember that, like you really are healing. It's totally normal to have rough times and rough days. You will get through this. You will get through this. And so all you can do right now is to try to just weather that storm as much as possible and to try to not wait to be happy, to not wait to experience joy. I know it's easier said than done. And I've talked about this before. It's like, when you have something traumatic happen, it feels like, okay, this bomb went off in your life and now you're like carrying around this trauma. It's okay. Like you can take a moment and say, you know what, I'm going to put this trauma down for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 2 hours. I'm going to go watch some stand-up comedy. I'm going to go for a bike ride. I'm going to go do something. And then if I want, because your brain's probably going to want to, then I can pick this back up again and hang on to it. Because it's just our brain's way of wanting to make sure that we're safe. But, and just practice experiencing emotions of like, okay, I'm incredibly sad, and it's okay to just feel them. Like, I'm really sad, I'm depressed, I can't get out of bed, and then it's okay to be happy. It's okay to feel numb. It's okay to feel how you feel. Time will even a lot of that stuff out. So I hope that helped. Shara says, I live with a narcissist and my mom does too. She is afraid if she says she wants to leave that he will hurt himself. So that's very common. Emotional manipulators manipulate emotion. And fear, obligation, guilt are huge, huge emotions. And it's sort of like either threatening suicide or acting in a way that's like, if you leave me, I don't know what I'm going to do. That's holding somebody emotionally hostage, and it's really not cool. So, nobody has, we can't control what other people are going to do. And you can't live your life like walking on eggshells because this person is saying, if you don't stay with me, like, I don't know, it's going to be all your fault if I commit suicide, or if I hurt myself, or if I do something. All any of us can do is, if you're concerned that they're a danger to themselves or others, all you can do is call the police, and say, this person, this is what they're saying. We're really concerned that they're gonna do something, that they're not gonna handle this well. And if that person's actively suicidal, then that's the proper response channel to go through, where they can actually get that person the help that they need. But if another person, like, you can't stay in an abusive relationship because you're terrified, because you're being held emotionally hostage like that. Because yeah, he might hurt himself, but he is for sure hurting you. And so if he ends up hurting himself, then that's his choice. That might sound really harsh, but we all have choices, and it's so outside of like reasonable behavior to hold somebody else. It's just so not cool to be like, if you don't do this, then I'm gonna hurt myself. Like, no. And if he's not serious, he's gonna learn real quick when the police show up over there, and that you're gonna get him the help that he needs. Like, you're not gonna play this game of being puppeteered around by him, threatening to hurt himself. Like, you're gonna take appropriate action, because that's all any of us can do. Cecilia says, my ex's birthday was on the 27th. I almost contacted him. But that's almost, but not quite, right? So a victory is what I see in that. I'll take it. Yeah, you. That's awesome. But you didn't contact him. So Twilight Sparkle says, he sucks me back in every time. I cannot seem to be able to escape. I am desperate. So that's very common. People oftentimes you're dealing with an emotional, not just an emotional manipulator, but a master emotional manipulator. These people are good at what they do, and they use all kinds of things. They use, intimidation and charm and hope and isolation and violence and fear and love and obligation and guilt and all of these different emotions to keep power and control and just play the puppet master and suck people back in. And that cycle, if your relationship is running that cycle of idealize, devalue, discard, that idealize, if that's what you're experiencing, man, it's hard to walk away from when a person is telling you everything that you want to hear and they're promising change, and it's hard. It's hard to give up on the hope. It's hard to give up on the fantasy. So one thing that I often recommend to people, which really helps. So there's a couple of things here. The reason it's hard is because we start experiencing cognitive dissonance. And that's basically when we have two thoughts about the same topic at the same time, and those two thoughts are conflicting. So if we have the thought of I want to stay and we have the other thought of I want to go, if our action is going to be I want to get back with this person, we have to pick the thought that matches that action. And so we rationalize, deny, gloss over all of the reasons as to why we need to not go back. And so something that helps to cut through that cognitive dissonance, and again, this is it's a very uncomfortable, we all experience it throughout our day normally. Even if you don't have an abusive person in your life, we all experience different degrees of cognitive dissonance. But so I did a video on that if you want to really get more into that, because that that concept is it's a game changer. It's really, really powerful stuff. And once you can realize how it feels when you're slipping into cognitive dissonance, then you can better prepare yourself, because you're like, oh, that's the warning sign. I know that. I know how that feels. And it starts off with the feeling of confusion. And here's the thing. When you're dealing with a problematic situation and of any degree, and you find yourself confused, we only experience confusion in a problematic situation when we know the answer but wish we didn't. So what helps to cut through that cognitive dissonance, that confusion, to not get sucked back in again, is in part, like we were talking about earlier, anticipate. How does he normally suck you back in? Is it fear? Is it intimidation? Is it charm? Is it sex? Is it, promises of change? What is it? So, and then to write all of this down, because that's part of that cognitive dissonance, is denial and rationalization and justification and minimization. And it is amazing the stuff that how our brains work. And this is all subconscious stuff. We are not even aware that we are doing this. And so people, when they're like, what is wrong with me? How did I forget this? Why do I keep going back? And that's a big part of it, it's that cognitive dissonance at work, and it's our brain rationalizing the divide between our thoughts and our actions. So I encourage people to write down a list of what I call for when you miss him or her. And then in that list, you write down every reason that you're leaving. The more emotionally painful you can make that list, the better off you'll be. I'm talking painful. If he cheated, if he, any low down, rotten, dirty thing, the crazy lies, the abuse, all of it. And so when those feelings of nostalgia come back, when that cognitive dissonance sets in again, because it will. It's just it's part of it until we have to most of us have to kind of circle around that mountain a few times to be absolutely sure that this is not going to work. So when you read that list, it'll help to really cut through that fog of confusion to where you're like, oh, right, that's why I can't go back. I need to stay, to hold my ground and to move forward, because there's nothing for me here. So Anthony says, do you offer one-on-one chat? I don't, but I am here every Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for 2 to 3 hours. You're going to find a lot of people. There's a lot of people on this chat that I would say are support crew. there's a lot of people that you can ask questions with. You'll see in the chat. And I also do have a support group. My website's thriveafterabuse.com. And there's 2 support groups, one on Facebook, one on my website. And, you know, I'm in those on a very regular basis. So I try to respond to as much stuff as I possibly can. If you haven't already joined a support group, I think you're going to be blown away by how validating and supportive and that they are, and how much clarity you're going to get in your situation when you have that one-on-one with people that have gone through this or that they're going through it. And the cool thing with the support group is, you know, most of them people, because like it's so cool because it's the internet. Like, you know, there's people from all over the world, and so this stuff runs. The support group runs like 24/7. There's always people on there, which is nice. Yeah, Roberta's saying, Anthony, do as much reading as you can. Go to support groups online, read, interact, and get educated. You will find strength and answers. Yes. And if you haven't, a good book that I think will really help, it's a good start, is the book Psychopath Free. And that's another thing I meant to say. So we had talked about, kind of segue here, we talked about doing a book club tomorrow on Psychopath Free. Is anybody still up for doing that? I was going to make a video about it and I totally forgot until yesterday. So I'm totally open. Oh, geez. Lisa says, he said we got married too young and he never loved me from the moment we got married. I had no clue. He's a firefighter with a huge ego and said I represented him and was an embarrassment to him. What a jerk. What a jerk. So I am so sorry that he said that to you. And that's just, you know, it's one thing to want a divorce, but you don't need to destroy the other person in the process. You know, it's just that totally lacks class to tell another person such a hateful thing like that. Like, oh, that just makes me want to go give him a piece of my mind. Like, that's just terrible. I'm sorry that you had to hear that. You know, it's that kind of stuff where it's unnecessary. It's this unnecessary of like grinding a person down on your way out the door. That's that attitude of like me versus you, or even worse, I would say it's the attitude of me at the expense of you. It's that attitude of like seek and destroy, of, you know, win. It's like I've got to win at all costs. Like that's that mindset of, to such a degree, and it can be devastating. Please, 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 please understand that him saying that is a total jerk face thing to say, and it is 100% a reflection of him and him trying to win and trying to grind you down and make this all your fault, and it is not a reflection of you, because normal, decent people don't say things like that to other people. They don't try to destroy them emotionally. That is just a real tasteless, classless thing for him to do. And frankly, he's an embarrassment to himself. That's just ridiculous. The chat. Yeah, Helene says, people that haven't been through this think it's crazy that I cut him out of my life 100%. It's hard, but I have to remember that they don't understand. They don't. So many people don't understand. They'll treat a relationship, a relationship with a narcissist, which is synonymous with an abusive relationship, as a relationship issue. Like it's a bad breakup, right? It's not. It's so much more than that. It's so far beyond that. It's the issues in a relationship when you have a person that lacks empathy, that lacks remorse, that has a blinding degree of selfishness and a jaw-dropping level of entitlement, and it's all about them, and they continue to manipulate and puppeteer things. That's not a relationship. That's a manipulationship. It's a one-sided dynamic. It's the dynamic that's between, a pimp and a prostitute, or a cult leader and a cult follower, between Hitler and, most of Germany. It's an unfair, unhealthy dynamic where you've got one person who's got power and control over the other one. And the other person oftentimes doesn't realize it, that they think that they're in this together, and they're not. And they're not going to be able, they're going to really struggle with trying to move forward, especially if they continue to get tangled up, because there's no shortage of well-intended bad advice out there. If a person hasn't experienced an emotional manipulator, they treat it like it's just relationship issues, that communication can solve it, which is ridiculous, right? It's sort of like, can you imagine a cult leader like Charles Manson and a Charles Manson follower going to therapy or sitting down and talking things out? Like, what's there to talk about? All of the issues are him. It's the cult leader that is the problem. And it's not a relationship issue. There's nothing that we can do except distance ourselves. When you've got a dangerous and destructive person who has no accountability, who has no insight to that their behavior is a problem, they're probably not going to change because they're a million miles away from recognizing that they have a problem. And all of us, we don't change until we can, at a minimum, realize that we have a problem. So, it's, people just don't get it. It's just so frustrating when they don't get it. They don't. Used and Abused says, do I even need to cut out people that are, that are nice but related? That's totally your call. It's totally your call. It's whatever you feel that you need to do in order to keep yourself safe and sane. Because when these relationships end, you've got the narcissistic person who's spinning things and oftentimes making themselves the victim of the situation, making themselves the victim of you. And that creates what's called, flying monkeys, which are like the Wizard of Oz, where they're manipulated people that are doing the bidding of the Wicked Witch. They're doing the bidding of the narcissist, and they will try to gather information and, potentially like harass or stalk or torment or kind of, just continue to agitate the narcissist's former target. So there is no like one answer to any of this. This all goes back to you knowing your situation the best and learning, and I guess this is where this starts, like learning to really trust in your own judgment and your perceptions of the situation, and to realize, okay, how much, like, what do you need? To what extent do you need? Sorry, I'm falling over here as I'm standing up and I'm gonna lean against my old chair thing. Okay. What do you need in order to have peace in your life? And so that for you, maybe that you can still keep in contact with mutual friends. Generally, that doesn't work for most people, but it's all about you navigating those waters and figuring out what works best for you in your situation. And he says, okay, I have a lot of cutting out to do. I feel bad. It sucks. And yeah, and people aren't going to get it. And they're not going to be okay with what you're doing. And they're going to say a lot of things that they're trying to come from a place of being like well-intended. So try to brace yourself emotionally as much as possible for that, and realize that they just don't understand. And it's not personal. It'll feel personal because they're talking directly to you about it, but it's not, because they don't see the full picture. And I mean, you think about it, right? Like, had we not gone through this, how do you even begin to explain to somebody this? Because it sounds so wild. And even, or it sounds really petty. Like, it doesn't sound wild at all. You're like, I don't understand. Like, they looked at you weird, or they left a note on your door. Like, what's the problem? Like, and trying to explain intimidation and different intimidation techniques and like psychological abuse and emotional abuse, because people only understand things. Everybody has this idea of like what abusive behavior is, what an abusive person looks like. And so if what you have in your life doesn't fit their idea of like what abuse is or what an abusive person looks like, it's not going to compute, because it doesn't fit their idea of what they think it is. So, and it's frustrating because most people tend to think of like abuse as extreme physical abuse or emotional abuse, or verbal abuse or emotional abuse as like extreme name calling. And if it's not like really, 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 really extreme over like a long period of time, then for a lot of people, it doesn't register as a problem. And so this is why I encourage people. This was like a big aha moment for me. So when I was going through all of this, because there's no shortage, like I said, there's no shortage of well-intended bad advice out there. You have to turn inward. There is no shortcut to this, and it's a lot of trial and error. So please be kind to yourself as you're moving forward in all of this, but learning to trust your judgment and your assessment of people and of a situation, and realizing that, not only do people see things from like their perspective, but they also see things based on like their own standards. That's deep. Like, people only see things from their own standards. So if dysfunction and chaos and dangerous or deadly behavior is like their normal, then it might not register for them as a problem. So this is why it's so important to turn inward, because you might be in a room full of people that have they don't understand what the big deal is. But if you're like, I know what I'm experiencing, I'm scared of this person, I can't quite pinpoint why, or, what have you, to be like, it doesn't matter what anybody else says or thinks or does. Like, this is all about you and trusting your judgment and your perception of things. So, okay, hold on, let's see. I like that. Ben says, what's normal for the spider is chaos for the fly. Yep, that's so true. Yep. Anthony says, okay, sometimes I feel like my narcissistic partner is starting to make me narcissistic, if that makes any sense. Like, maybe I am going crazy. You're not going crazy. What you're describing is psychological abuse. Generally, there's a term called gaslighting. If you're not familiar with it, I highly recommend looking it up. I did a video, I think I did a video. Probably done a few videos on that. And so gaslighting is when it's a weird thing. So it can be something that's intentional, and it can be something that is unintentional. And when it's done intentionally, it's well, either way, It's where a person is denying another person's reality. And so that causes, it can be absolutely crazy making. It can make a person feel like, did they misremember? Did they mishear? Like, because it's stuff that doesn't make sense. It's weird things that you would, that again, like we are our own baseline for normal. So we're like, I wouldn't lie about that. Like, why are they lying about this? And normal people wouldn't lie about this. So I must have heard wrong, or maybe I just don't remember correctly. So for example, it might be something like you guys get in a fight and all of a sudden he spins things around and he starts calling you abusive or calling you a narcissist because let's say you suspect he's cheating, right? And he's like texting all these people and you're like, this is really weird. And you bring up something, then he spins it around on you saying, you've got jealousy issues, you've got insecurity issues, I can't handle your issues anymore. I give and I give and I give, and I can't fix you. You need therapy. You're the problem. You're crazy, right? You're too sensitive. You're too emotional. You can't take a joke. It's all your fault. And then all of a sudden everything's turned back on you and you're like, like, oh my gosh, how did we get here? And next thing you know, like you're apologizing for things. And then when that fight's over, like, I don't even know what just happened, but now he's mad at me because I caught him cheating. And now I'm getting the silent treatment, or I'm getting hit, or whatever. But then the added crazy making is maybe the next morning, if you're maybe he's in the kitchen making breakfast, acting like nothing happened. And you're like, you know, like what am I and you mentioned something about the fight last night and he looks at you like you're from Mars. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that wasn't a fight. Oh, you're so dramatic. You're so overly emotional. Oh, you, right? Like that kind of stuff. It's crazy making, and it does not take a long time for when a person's reality is denied like that, and they have no other like witness to what they're going through or what they're experiencing. It's so hard there's a ripple effect to that, and it can stay with a person for quite a while where they're like, I don't know, like you have a hard time trusting your judgment, like what's real, what's not real, what's really going on. Am I the problem? Are they the problem? I don't know. They're telling me that I'm, manipulating them, and I don't think that I am. And I know that something's really off, but I don't know why or what or how to fix it or what's going on. None of that's normal. Like none of that. So, but very, very, very common for people to experience. What you can do in that situation is to ask yourself, this is also a concept that comes from Psychopath Free. So if we do, I don't know how good of a book club thing we're going to end up having if we end up doing this tomorrow, but I have my notes on that book. Anthony, I think you're going to be blown away when you read it. It's going to make so many things make so much sense. I have my notes on my website. If you go to thriveafterabuse.com, go to book club, and then go to like book club notes and scroll down, and it's Psychopath Free. And you can read all my notes on that book. But it's like, I would say like the book, if a person is needing validation and clarity as to their experience, he does such a great job at explaining the crazy making of it all. It's just, he just nails it. It's like, start there. Okay, let's see. Anthony says, should I turn him in for all the illegal things he's done, or should I just move on? I think whatever you decide with that, I would make sure that you are at a place where you are safe and sane before you do that, because especially something like that, you're, again, anticipation is like our superpower in this. And it's like going to kick a bee's nest. Like if you're going to kick a bee's nest, you really need to have a plan. And when you're dealing with that mindset where it's me versus you, or me at the expense of you, they play to win, and they play at all cost. They don't care. Like that is that attitude, that entitlement mentality where they feel totally justified in winning, whatever that might be. So somebody had mentioned the term narcissistic injury. That's basically when a narcissistic person starts losing that power and control, and especially if they not only lose it, but there's this insult to their injury where all of a sudden they're not feeling superior anymore. Like the ball is really not in their court. And now they're public, they have a lot more to lose, right? Like their public image is threatened. You know, a lot of, I mean, social status, potentially going to jail, those kinds of things are threatened. They can become very vindictive, very hateful, and it can just be a real mess. So I'd have a plan as to where you're gonna go if you do something like that. Whether or not you do that, I guess it depends on what all he's done. If you have how much proof you really have, it might be best to talk to, like, to either call like the non-emergency police and talk to them about it, or to maybe contact an attorney and see if you can talk to them for, like, if they offer like a 30-minute free consultation or something, just to see how they would advise you on that. But I'm a huge fan of, not, whatever action you take, you've got to make sure that you're not putting yourself in harm's way. First and foremost, especially if your nephew is in that house, because narcissistic people, again, it's that mindset, right? Of like me versus you, me versus everybody else. They don't attach to other people. Like they just, there's no depth to their feelings. So not only are you potentially in harm's way, so is your nephew. So it's really important that both of you and your nephew, get to a place where, you're not in harm's way before you do anything. Yep. Anthony says it's like almost like I married a child. Yep, totally. It's like awful, bratty, ridiculous, temper tantrum throwing adult, like man baby, like in an adult body. It's ridiculous, and it gets to a point of ridiculousness where, like, I cannot even believe that I'm dealing with like this level of like nonsense and drama and immaturity from an adult. Like how does this even happen? So oh my gosh. Sandra says, is this gaslighting? He told me he had 4 daughters. I found out it's 11 plus kids. OMG. You could probably make the case for that. I mean, I think, at a minimum, it's like lying and manipulation. Like really, really wild stuff. Gaslighting, I think different people kind of have different definitions of it. The way I look at it is it's really denying somebody's reality. So it would be more like, it's more than just a lie. It would be something like him saying, "Hey, I've got 4 kids." You find out he's got 11, and then him saying, "What? No, I only have 4." Like, you're crazy. They or something along those lines where you're like, I know what I saw, and like this is what happened, and now you're telling me that I didn't see that correctly, or that I misremembered you saying, like if he'd said, no, I always told you I had 11 kids, like you just forgot, like that would be more along the lines of what I would consider to be gaslighting. Yeah, Truth Seeker says, knowledge really is power. It is so much power in this, because once you see, hold on a second, I want to fall through this little chair. This thing is, once you see, once you have words to describe your experience, then everything makes sense. Part of being so lost in that fog is you're like, I you know something's off, but you're like, I can't quite put my finger on it. Like, I don't know. Like it was the way that he said something, or the way that she looked at me, or like it just, you're like grasping at straws, trying to define your experience. And that is even more isolating and crazy making, because to try to explain like covert abuse like that to other people, where you can't even, you're like, I know how I feel, I know what's going on to some extent, but you can't articulate it. To other people it seems really petty or insignificant, and it's not. It's just that they lack the terminology for it. But once you understand, like, oh, this is what gaslighting is, this is what triangulation is, this is what projection is, this is what, you know, just like, pot stirring, baiting, flying monkeys, hoovering, all of these terms are, once you see it, and you're like, ding, and you just see it. But again, that kind of goes back to that other layer of crazy making, where you totally see it, but very few other people really do, because if they've never experienced it, then like they don't understand. They're still thinking of it in terms of like a normal relationship, and it's not. Ronnie asks, what would projection be? So it would be something like it tends to be out of the blue. And so projection is a really interesting psychological concept. It's when, and we all do it, it's when we don't oftentimes realize that we're doing it to some extent. But to the extent that they do it, they know. They just don't want to have accountability for their actions. So what it is when we are holding an uncomfortable thought, that again, this is cognitive dissonance. When we're holding this uncomfortable thought that doesn't line up with our action, with who we think we are, then our brain, like our subconscious mind, projects that like a movie projector onto this other person. So a real common example of that would be when you've got a partner who's cheating, and all of a sudden they start accusing you of cheating. And they're like dead set that you were cheating on them. They want to know where you were. They want to know who you were out with. They're going through your clothes. They're going through your phone. And you're like, where is this coming from? And because it's so, they're like so convinced. And and oftentimes we try to rationalize that or justify it. We think, well, maybe they were cheated on, or they probably were saying, oh, they were cheated on before, which with a narcissist, because they have no accountability for anything, odds are they were cheating on their partner before. But because they can never, in their mind, it's all about them and they're perfect, they justify all of their behavior, and there's no accountability there. So the best way to do that is just to blame the other person. Okay, there's some really good comments. hold on. Let's see here. Elise. Hi, Elise. Okay, hold on a second here. Truth Seeker says, I looked up negging on YouTube and was disgusted by what some guys are being instructed to do to bring down women's self-esteem. Yes, I know. I came across that term a while back, and it's like beyond ridiculous. And so it's, sorry, I can't, obviously I can't talk and stand at the same time. So it's this concept where if it's like a weird psychological concept where you basically try to get a beautiful woman. So like if you're a guy and you want to approach this woman, but you're very intimidated by her, that you would do certain things like make a comment like, oh boy, you really do talk a lot. Or, you know, are you sure you're gonna be able to eat all that? Boy, you sure do eat a lot. Like the whole goal is to like plant seeds of insecurity to where she's going to be kind of thrown off guard because now it's a whole power and control thing. So now her attractiveness, she's not holding all the power of being like, oh, well, I'm the woman, so I'm going to decide whether or not I'm going to talk to you. The guy puts the power and control in his court where he's kind of in these subtle ways, like insulting her to where they're more on like an equal playing field. So she's going to be more receptive to his talking to her or his advances. Like whenever you have to resort to psychologically abusing somebody, that's pathetic. Like, give me a break, you know? Just freaking people, I swear. Yes, thank you so much, Danielle. Yes, 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 yes. She says, in the beginning to heal, I had the most significant breakthrough when I directed the same attention and desire to help him, instead directed that towards myself. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like I was talking about earlier, the gift in this is, it can be, and it's a hell of a way to learn. It's a hell of a way to get this gift. Is the gift in this can be really truly examining who we are and loving ourselves unconditionally. Because it's like when you have a narcissist in your life, they just blow apart everything. Everything, 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 everything. And a person, you tend to like look around and your life is a pile of rubble. And people are often like left wondering, how do I even begin to rebuild? And not just like my identity, but like my life, my finances, my physical life, my everything. You just feel so destroyed on so many levels. And, the upside, like to having your life blown apart, is that you can start consciously picking up the pieces and deciding, okay, like which pieces am I going to rebuild with? And then only rebuilding with those pieces that you choose. It's, like I said, it's incredibly intense, and it can be so incredibly rewarding. It's such a hard fought battle, but it's just intense. But it's just all about love, learning to like really love yourself and to reclaim your power and control. And it's never too late. It's never too late to start loving yourself. It's never too late to start reclaiming your power and control, and to start moving forward and to living a life that you really want to live. Let's see. Megan says, I've had 3 relationships in my life with toxic men. How does one trust yourself or another again? Yes, yes. And Diane says, it's so hard to rebuild when your sense of trust is shattered. Yes, everything is in rubble after these types of relationships. Trusting other people was something that I really struggled with, and I think everybody does. Like, I think it'd be weird if a person kind of didn't struggle with that. And once you start, okay, so like trust is earned, right? It's not just freely given, and it's earned over appropriate, consistent behavior over like an appropriate, consistent amount of time. And so I think a lot of us didn't realize, most people, I think in general, are not aware of like signs of problematic behavior. And so a big part of learning to trust again is, and because really what we're saying there is like learning to keep ourselves safe is what that is learning the signs of what's problematic. So once you can identify a lot of, and there's a couple of things with this, but like once you can identify what's problematic, then it really helps to trust yourself, because you, again, like you can have the vocabulary for what you're experiencing, and getting that validation from other so this is why support groups can be really good. Getting that validation from other people of, yes, this is indeed problematic. Like, it's not just you. It's not because you went through 3 relationships with 3 really toxic people. This is in fact problematic. And so when people, I guess, when they get out of these types of relationships, they're like, they have a hard time telling the difference and sorting out the difference between these concepts, between like, love and love bombing, and sincerity and intensity, and, being cautious and being hypervigilant. And, there's just there's just a lot of like blurred lines there. And I don't think I did an article. Do I still have it? I do have it. It's kind of smeared, but I wrote a blog post. So if you go to my blog, thriveafterabuse.com, and it's an article on boundaries. That's a great place to start. So, because when you get out, even if you had the most amazing boundaries before, going through the meat grinder 3 times is going to really cause a person to be really disoriented about what's appropriate boundaries, what's appropriate behavior, and like what's problematic behavior. So this comes from the book Healing the Child Within, and my notes are on my website too for that book. But he does a really great job with explaining, and these are like his diagrams too, of explaining what healthy boundaries look like. Because when you're with an emotional manipulator, their whole goal is to they don't want you to have boundaries, because it's all about them. And so it can't be all about them if you're putting on the brakes and saying, no, I'm not okay with that, I want to slow things down, or what have you. And they do such a good job at just really getting in there and saying, spinning things around and making it seem like, you've got the problem, and that you're letting a good thing go, and it's too bad you have trust issues, and it messes with the person's mind at like epic levels. But I thought this was good. So you have appropriate boundaries. So each circle is a person, if you can see this. So you have, with a stranger, you're glare on my board. You're, like apart from them, right? Like you've got that like personal space distance between the two of you. Then you have the boundaries between a casual like acquaintance, which a casual acquaintance is somebody that you somewhat know, right? Like somebody that maybe you meet online or you meet in person, you've talked a few times, you've gone out for coffee a few times, you're you're not sharing. So this would be like your level of like sharing with this other person. So it's small talk. It's, how was your holiday? How was the weather? How are you feeling? Like these kinds of things. Close friends, which again, this takes time. Like there's this evolution of boundaries here. So all of this takes time. Where a lot of us tend, because emotional manipulators create oftentimes whirlwind situations, whether it's a whirlwind romance, whether it's a whirlwind, business partnership, whether it's like a whirlwind, you know, like you name it, that's what they create. And they get that because they want what they want and they want it now. And if a person, they lay it on, it's like a little kid that wants something, like they just lay it on so thick and they're telling you everything you want to hear, like a little kid that wants a puppy, and they're going to tell you like, oh, and I really want a puppy, and they're going to throw out every trick in the book, oh, you're just the best, mom or aunt ever, and I will walk this puppy and 4 times a day and 6 times on the weekend, and I'll clean up after it, and I'll just do whatever you need me to do in order to get this puppy, and I just want it so much, and I just love you so much, and you're just the best. And then if that doesn't work, then they switch to, I hate you. You're not nice. You're not fair. You're not my mommy. And like they're going to try to punish you, right? And use guilt in order to get you to cave in. And kids are like master manipulators like little kids are like really good at this when they want something and they can sense weakness. So if they can sense like you're so close, then they're really going to amp up their game, right? It's emotional manipulation is the same at like any age. And so when you're dealing with like adult, like an emotional manipulator that's an adult, it's very much the same thing. And so they tend to come on really fast and furious. It's called love bombing. So it's constant communication, constant compliments. It's wanting to talk to somebody for generally hours upon hours every single day. And when a person's on the receiving end of that, it can feel absolutely intoxicating because this person is just, man, they're doing a lot of mirroring. So everything you like, they like. And you just feel so in sync with this person that it feels like this really deep soulmate connection that's there. So when that whirlwind really starts kicking up, so now they're talking about moving in together, combining finances, or like getting married, and you've been with them for like 2 weeks. And they're talking about how you're the one, and they just know these things, and they've never met anybody like you before, and oh my gosh, they've never had this amazing connection with anybody like this before, and oh my God, look, you're having sex, 10 times a day, and it's just intense, and you're not even getting out of bed, and it's so much, where it's really hard for a person to think straight. And it's the same thing like with online dating scams, right? People don't give their whole life savings to a total stranger. They give it to a person that they feel is their potential fiance. It's emotional manipulators all work the same. They just come in different areas of our life. So, but once you can spot the behavior, it helps a lot. The other part of that is, even if you don't spot the behavior, realizing you are in the driver's seat. It does not matter like what anybody else has to say. If you're not comfortable with something, you don't do it. Like, and that's a really hard thing for a lot of people, I think women especially, because it's this idea of we don't want to be rude. And, it's okay. Like, that's something that we all just have to really get over. And men too, but I think women tend to really struggle with that. But it's paying attention to how you feel. If things are moving too fast for you, that's all that matters. Nobody else gets to vote. And so if you tell somebody else, hey, you know what, you just met this other person, now all of a sudden they're like wanting to spend, maybe they even seem nice enough. They don't even seem like an emotional manipulator, but you're just like, I don't want to go on a first date that lasts 10 hours. Like, I just want to go out for coffee. And they're wanting to like dinner and a movie and then go to the park. And it's okay. It's okay. And this is all part of it where you have the power and control to put the brakes on and say, you know what, I would prefer just to meet you for coffee 45 minutes on like a Wednesday afternoon. Like you can dictate your schedule, like that kind of thing. And so, but emotional manipulators will try to oftentimes make a person feel guilty about that. Like, oh, I really want to do this right. I've never met anybody like you before. I really want to take you out for something big. I really want to go to this like all day concert and, this whirlwind weekend long date kind of a thing. And it can be hard to hold that boundary, but it's really important that you do, because everybody looks good for like the first probably like 6 weeks to 3 months. It's like a job interview, right? Like people, like they put more effort in. And then once they start getting comfortable, then like they start being more themselves. And it takes time. Time is the only way. How do you trust somebody is you pay attention to what you're experiencing over time. And trusting yourself enough to be okay with walking away. That's another big part of that. I think for a lot of people, again, myself included, where I was waiting for something really obvious. Like I needed something to point to and say, this is problematic. See, this person, they called me a name, or they did something like more concrete. And so I really, really struggled with that when I was experiencing behavior that just seemed off, but I couldn't figure out, like, is it me? Is it him? Is it like what? I couldn't pinpoint it. And one of the big lessons, I think, for a lot of us is realizing like, you don't need to be able to pinpoint it. Like if it's off, it's off. A person doesn't have to be like a full out narcissist in order to cause massive destruction in your life. Frankly, just having people that are not right enough can be very damaging for your life as well. Because then you're just treading water. Like nobody wants that. Like you want to have people that are in your life where it's that mutual give and take, and like you're empowering them, they're empowering you, and you just have this like amazing synergy. So, but it takes all of this takes practice, because it's a new skill set. It's sort of like learning to ride a bike or learning to roller skate or learning to walk. If you're learning to walk and you fall down a few times, that baby's not going to stop walking. Like you encourage it. It's okay. Like you get back up, you get your balance and you start again. And it's the same thing with learning to trust your intuition and just moving slow. Because, frankly, odds are you're probably not going to do it perfectly right out of the gate. And that's okay. Like this is all it's all part of it. It's all part of the learning curve to it. I know that might sound terrifying if you've already been through this a couple times, but this is where going slow really helps. And it's not, I also want to make the clarification too, it's not going slow because you're afraid of being hurt. It's going slow because you value your emotions and you value your time. This has the benefit to this is that it really prevents you from being hurt. But it's, everything is easy to get into. It's so much harder to get out of. That's why there's so much value in just going slow, seeing things eyes wide open, taking your time to really see them in a wide variety of situations, asking yourself, like, if you're feeling confused about what you're seeing, that generally experiencing confusion is a sign that there's a problem. So taking time, if you experience confusion, to just take some time to back up a little bit and examine, like, why am I experiencing this confusion? And to really pay attention to that. If you're feeling to yourself, boy, there sure are a lot of parallels between like this person and this other problematic person that I dated. that's a huge red flag, because it means on like more of a subconscious level, you're picking up on stuff that you're either, your conscious mind's not connecting the dots, or it's wanting to deny it because you're not wanting to see it, because you're wanting this relationship to work out. It's a weird thing that our brains do. So going slow is how you rebuild. And that trust will start to be rebuilt when trust is earned. When you start investing trust in trustworthy people, you're going to be giving yourself that added reassurance of, yes, I know what I'm doing, and I realize that I am giving trustworthy people trust. And that just takes time. So, mm, okay. Venice says, Dana, how do I manage my severe case of CPTSD? My narcissistic parents have left me suicidal. I can't see a therapist right now. I'm concerned that you're suicidal. So I guess where are you with that? Like, are we talking that you're really feeling like you're gonna hurt yourself? Or are you feeling like you're at the end of your rope? Which might sound kind of like you're, I'm splitting hairs here, but do you have a plan? Do you have an intent to hurt yourself, or are you feeling like you just don't know what to do right now? If you're feeling like you're going to hurt yourself, and especially if you're starting to think of a plan, I would strongly encourage you. I don't know if you are in Italy, I'm not quite sure what they do there, but to get help. And see if you need to go into a hospital for a few days and get on some medication, or what you need to take a time out, whatever you need to do. Like, you are the number one priority right now. Like, everything else, like nothing else matters right now. Right? So you've really got to make that a priority. Because if you're not around, then nothing else matters. So I guess let's talk about that first. Renee is saying, see a psychologist ASAP. Yeah, Manchester is saying, are you feeling suicidal literally or metaphorically? And I guess I would kind of encourage you to kind of ask yourself, what do you think would help right now? If feeling suicidal is more like metaphorically, where you're like, I can't handle this. I'm just under so much stress and so much pressure, and I can barely breathe, and my anxiety is through the roof. What has helped in the past? Does journaling help? Does yoga help? Does can you get out of town for a few days? Does getting into nature help? Does participating in a support group help? There's a lot. I'm a huge fan. There's YouTube is such an amazing resource. There's a ton of different like guided imagery videos on there that help. I did a video on for complex PTSD. It's a guided imagery and relaxation video, and it has affirmations as well. There's quite a few out there. None of these is like the one answer, right? It's a kind of like a series of tools in your toolkit. So it's really knowing yourself and knowing what works for you and what you need to do right now in order to keep yourself safe and sane. Yes, thank you, Elise. I agree completely. She was saying, Venice, your parents' programming in you tells you that you're not worthy. You are worthy. All of us are. It's so true. It's so true. Their words are words that are designed to grind. The words of a narcissist are there to grind another person down. It's that win-lose mentality. And it's not you. It's not you. It's them. It's them. It's them. It's them. It's them. And so if you can try to separate yourself and realize that you're dealing with people that are hateful and angry and abusive, and I think it can be helpful for some people to just view it as like they're mentally ill. Like you're not dealing with a person that's in reality. Like normal, healthy people don't treat other people like this. And to not take and I know it's easier said than done, but to try to not take what they're saying personally. It's like if a person has Alzheimer's, right? And they're all of a sudden they're accusing you of stealing, and they're saying, "Oh, you're awful, and you're stupid, and you're this and you're that," and it can be a lot easier to not take that personally if you're realizing this person they have a disorder with their brain. Like, this is not me. Like they're out of their mind. Like they don't know what, of course, abusive people do know what they're saying, but I think it can be helpful to realize this is them. Like this is what's going on in their brain. It has nothing to do with you. If you weren't there would be some other target that they would dump all their venom on. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Thank you, Cecilia. It's so helpful. Um, Cecilia says, I also have narcissistic parents. They did nothing but give me all of their negative feelings about themselves. I'm in therapy now to heal from the damage they have done. It is doable. And you articulated that so well. So Venice, I hope that helps you and gives you some sort of peace, because it's like, I mean, Cecilia, you just really nailed it. She said, they did nothing but give me all of their negative feelings about themselves. Yes. 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 That's what it is. It's not you, it's them. It's them. You are so very welcome, Cecilia. You guys, like, I say this all the time and I so mean it. It's the power of all of this is the healing in all of this is all of us. We all bring pieces of the puzzle, right? Together. And it's together. It's like it's a comet. It's a really like perfect comet set at the perfect time. And it's like, ding, like there's a piece of the puzzle, and it just starts snapping into place. And it's so cool. It's really awesome to see the magic happen like that. Anthony, there's a video that I did. There's a playlist I did. If you haven't seen it, what is it? It's called something like Want to Know Why You're Dating a Narcissist, or want something like, oh, can't tell if what you're experiencing is harming or charming, I think is what the playlist is called. And it talks about like examining our vulnerabilities. And because narcissists, they exploit people's vulnerabilities. We're all human, so we all have vulnerabilities. And this is all part of like getting to know yourself and turning inward and figuring out, okay, at this stage in my life, and we're going to have different vulnerabilities throughout our life. Like my vulnerabilities now at the age of 39 are going to be very different than they might be at the age of 93. So examining like what are your vulnerabilities at this stage in your life, and how are they able, like, of course, hindsight's always 2020, right? How are they able to effectively manipulate your vulnerabilities? And so once you can kind of reverse engineer it and figure out how that happened, it can help to better prepare you to address those vulnerabilities, as well as to see that behavior for what it is. So for example, in my own life, I kept falling for love bombing, and I and it was making me crazy because I was like, I don't understand what I'm missing. Like, these men are really, really good to me. So how do things go so bad? How does it start as a fairy tale and then end as a Lifetime TV movie? Like, what am I missing? And at first I thought it was just coincidence. But then when it kept happening, I'm like, okay, there's something going on here that I like not at the forefront of my mind. So what am I missing? And when I realized, I had, for me, like I call them empty buckets. Like, I grew up feeling very unloved and very unimportant. And whether, or, and here's the other weird thing about that. It can be real or it can just be perceived. I've encountered a lot of children who were adopted. Even if they were adopted into amazing homes, if they have this feeling where they just associated being adopted with somehow that they weren't worthy, or that they weren't loved, if they've been walking around feeling, just perceiving, right, that they weren't loved or important, then that really primes a person unknowingly, right, for love bombing. And so if we're walking around feeling unloved and unimportant, and somebody comes into our lives and they make us feel really loved and really important in their whole world, and then things start to turn, and that's how they lure us in. So that's only one way. I mean, there's many different ways, and it depends on, I think that's a pretty common way, but there's a lot of different ways. So it's worth kind of exploring all of that. Yep. Diane says narcissistic men, I would say, and women too, are good to you to hook you, and then it feels like a bait and switch. Yep, because it is. So, and it's weird when things all of a sudden start to shift, and you're like, wait a minute, like we had this amazing connection, and I meant so much to them, and we had this, like, I was their whole world, and now all of a sudden, I felt just so important and so flattered, and that they were so good to me. And I felt so lucky, like I'd won the relationship lottery, right? And then things slowly start to turn. And of course, if they're blaming you, then you're like, well, wait a minute. Is it, did I, am I too demanding? Like, am I insecure or jealous? Or like, how are things like starting to turn? And now next thing you know, you've made them your whole world, and now you're trying desperately to cling on to this relationship and doing anything that you need to do in order to change, in order to keep this person there. And you're like, how did I even get to this point? Like, it's so subtle, and it happens so quickly. Yeah, Truth Seeker says, beware of white knights. Beware, beware, beware. Yes, the white knights are the Prince Charmings. And for men, beware of the damsel in distress. And it's the whole thing, like trying to rescue somebody else. We can't do it. We don't have that power. Like, they have to rescue themselves. And frankly, like, not only can we not do it, it's cheating them out of the opportunity for growth. Like, it's just part of it. It's part of like leveling up and getting to the next level, is having this obstacle and learning how to overcome it and moving forward and realizing and building self-esteem and self-confidence and being like, yes, I'm in this hole right now, but I can climb out of it and I can do it. And it's not helping anybody if we continue to scoop them up and then, make sure that they're continually okay. It doesn't work, especially if they don't want help. Like, then we're sinking ourselves to save them and they don't even care. So yeah, charming. And it literally, like, it's charming. It's that word, charming. There's people that are likable, right? And that's one thing. But charming is schmoozy. Like, it's just that feeling of you're just agreeing with everything that I'm saying. And like, I feel like I'm being put on a pedestal. You feel like kind of they're, what book was that in? I think it was The Gift of Fear. I think it was. And he had said, he's like, whenever you come across somebody that's charming, ask yourself, why is this person trying to charm me? I love that. I thought that was so well said. And right on. Because normal people aren't charming. Likable, perhaps. Charismatic, perhaps. Charming, something's off. Yep. Cecilia says, laying on the charm is basically synonymous with laying it on thick. Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Anthony, does anyone know anything about abusers using religion as a tool to abuse others? Yes. So what you're talking about is called spiritual abuse. And let me stop the chat here. So there's all these different ways that an abusive person, seeks to get and keep power and control over others. And so spiritual abuse is, there's many different types of abuse, but spiritual abuse is basically when a person is using God or their faith, like, to abuse them. So it'll say something like, well, God, we're Catholic, so it's important that you forgive and forget. Or we're Catholic, or we're Jewish, so we don't believe in divorce. Or we're, if you really loved Allah, then you would do this, right? Or like, kind of the threat of hell, the threat of punishment, the threat of, because God is like the ultimate, right? Like the ultimate authority, the ultimate, creator and jury and judge. And so it's a very, all of this is so oftentimes like so subtle. And so when people like are in it, it's really hard for them. It's really hard for them to see it. There's a gal that had emailed me about a month or so ago on my site. If you look under, let me get there real quick. I think it's True Stories. There's, her story is spiritual abuse. And yes, okay, if you go under the tab, that's, so thriveafterabuse.com, then go to the tab that says True Stories, and it's the latest one. Let's see here. Nope, it's not. Hold on a second, let me look. Okay, I think it's Elaine's story. Yes. Yep. And her whole story, this guy was really just like intensely like major stuff going on with him, and really put her through a lot. So it can be helpful to read. I think hearing other stories of other people really helps to just give a person like validation and clarity for what they've experienced, because it's so hard. It's so hard to see. Okay, Pray Jeff asks, how do you get off the radar of a narcissist? So there's a term that's called, yeah. So there's two ways. You can either go no contact or you can go gray rock, and if you can totally break ties with that person, like assuming you don't have children with them, or you don't work together, those kinds of things. If you can go no contact, that can oftentimes be just like the best way to just completely distance yourself from them at all cost. The other way is going gray rock. And so gray rock is something that you can start doing immediately. And so, because sometimes a person, when they go no contact, it's something that they have to plan for, to kind of like develop like their exit strategy for it. So if a person is going to go gray rock is a term that basically means like emotional detachment. Because think about narcissistic people as bullies. So bullies bully people because they want that reaction from them. They're doing this to feel smug and superior. And they oftentimes target people based on weaknesses that they feel that they have. So if they, bullies pick on like a weak kid at school because they don't like the weakness within themselves, and generally because they're getting bullied or abused at home is what it is. And so it's all of those emotions, and they're putting it on, they're seeing a lot of like their emotions in themselves in this other person, and so that's why they're bullying them. And frankly, that's probably why they're being bullied. I mean, it's just like this chain reaction, right? So if you cannot give them the reaction that they're after, so this is called supply. So like the reaction that they're after, in this context, it would be considered like a form of narcissistic supply. And generally like provoking an emotion like anger or jealousy or fear, those kinds of things, letting them know that they were able to get a rise out of you is what they're after. If you don't let that happen, then they tend to move on. But it's kind of like a little kid. So like they continue to amp up what they're doing in order to get a reaction. Gray rock. Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you for bringing this up. Spirits Art Attack says gray rock only makes my ex-narcissist even more abusive. Yes. So thank you for bringing this up. So no contact is a really, it's an ideal strategy. It's one that's most commonly encouraged for people. And sometimes no contact can make an abusive person become more abusive, and sometimes gray rock can make them become more abusive as well. So it's all about knowing your own situation and trusting yourself and doing whatever you need to stay safe and sane. There was a gal a while ago who came up with this concept. I thought it was brilliant, and she called it like dumb like a fox, and it's really like smart like a fox is what it is. And where you realize that this person is trying to get a reaction out of you, and that or that they're trying to pull you back into the relationship, you see the game for what it is, and then you start playing the game accordingly, knowing that you are now playing to win, and that you're going to start doing whatever you need to do to move yourself to a place of safety and sanity. So when a person does gray rock, you can do it in a way where, because if they're looking for a reaction, like if they're really intent on fighting, right? Like, or they're trying to make you jealous, or they're what have you, doing it in a way where you're like, you know what, I'm just really tired. I just, again, like, your situation best. So if you're like, you know what, I'm just really tired, can we talk about this later? Or you're not feeding into their fire. You're just distancing yourself emotionally. Like, you're trying to just emotionally diffuse the situation, like you're trying to just stay like emotionally neutral to what they're doing so you can just like back up and get the heck out of there. I like what Roberta is saying. People are I think they're talking about, my guess would be the charm. And this is also part of what's called future faking. So it's that promise of, given enough time, love, understanding, therapy, rehab, religion, that I'll change, right? And they oftentimes will throw in there like, what, I really, let's, and of course they'll try to like rope their person in, like, let's adopt that child. Let's sell everything and buy an RV. Let's take that trip to, Thailand. Let's do all of these things, right? And they're getting this person even more entangled in the fantasy, and then oftentimes like more entangled financially or emotionally with them. And it can be really hard to walk away when a person is selling you this fantasy of this life that you've been holding on to hope could eventually be possible with them. And I really like what Roberta is saying here of tell yourself that it's all charm. And somebody had mentioned earlier about it being a glamour, like the movie Twilight. I think that, I love that. Like, that's so perfect because it is. It's not real. It's magic. It's like this glamour of, you're seeing this ideal self. Like what you're seeing, that ideal self is a mask. It's not real. What I did that helped me was in my cell phone, when the second guy that I had been in a relationship with came back and was doing that future faking intensely hardcore, and I didn't know about a lot of this I didn't know really about any of this at the time, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know if it was real. I didn't know if he was sincere. I just didn't know. And but how I felt was like the movie Pet Sematary, where the little boy dies, they bury him in that pet cemetery, and then what comes back, it looks like their son and it talks like their son, but it's not their son. Like what came back is evil. Like that's how I felt. And so I had changed the name of him in my cell phone to Pet Cemetery as that constant reminder of, Dana, don't fall for this. Like, this is not real. Like, I don't know who this person is, but this is not the man that you fell in love with. Like, this person's evil, and he truly does not care. And he's just saying whatever he needs to say in order for you to get sucked back in. But for what? I mean, that's kind of the other thing too with narcissists. I heard a great quote the other day. A narcissist is a person that insists that you make them your everything while they make you their nothing. And that's exactly what it is. Like, you will give and you give and you give, and they will take and they take and they take, and they don't have empathy or remorse, and they don't care. They don't care, and they just throw people away like nothing. So, yeah. Cecilia says the cursed burial ground beyond the pet cemetery. Oh, it's beyond the pet cemetery is where they buried the cat and the kid. I just remember that old guy, the old farmer guy in the movie, and he was talking about like, oh, that ground is sour. The ground is sour. It's a bunch of nonsense. Yeah, Elise says they're vampires. Yeah, it's energy vampires. That's what I think that name comes from. So, yeah, Helene says, when my ex discarded me, he didn't even make it clear. He said we needed a break, but when I begged him to tell me if it was over for good or not, he wouldn't answer. He wants me as a supply for later. Yes. Yes. And my guess would be that he's cheating. I'm sorry. I don't know if you've connected that or not. But yeah, they generally do that. So it's their way of justifying their behavior by telling themselves, oh, well, we weren't together. Like I told her I needed a break. So, or I told her that I wanted a divorce, or, you know, we were in a fight, and like then they surface 3 days, 3 weeks, whatever later, and they expect to be taken back. So, yeah, I would really do your for when you miss him list and just realize you don't there's nothing there. It's all smoke and mirrors. And trying to move towards a mirage, hoping that you'll find water is it's just going to lead you down a path that never ends. Oh yeah, blues evil says, I hate the fact that the girls at work all said, "You've got to keep her." All the while, I knew the secret of a monster he was. That was mine. Yeah, everybody. He was so incredibly charming and handsome and likable and just the total package. I mean, it was unreal how women just swooned. Women wanted to be with him, men wanted to be him. And nobody, like, nobody saw what he did coming. Like nobody saw it. And I really felt like nobody was even going to believe me. I mean, my closest friends believed me and they were like, yeah, we saw a few things like here and there, but he just really came across as like the world's greatest guy. And, totally appropriate. He was never, he wasn't like a he wasn't like the arrogant creeper, weirdo narcissist. Like he just came across as like a really solid good guy, and he just was so not that. But had I moved a lot slower, I got caught up. I got caught up in all the love bombing. I got caught up in the whirlwind of it all, and that's why I don't do that anymore. I don't do that. And when I started dating again, oh man, I was such a nervous wreck for such a long time because I still hadn't quite linked up like all of the right lessons learned. So I think, and I've discussed this before, like with the guy that I dated before, I linked up a lot of his problematic behavior to the wrong things. I linked it up to, well, maybe he was kind of a weird, he had like weird, sexual things with, he just had things about him that were very different. And I associated that with, well, maybe it was because he was European. I thought to myself, I'm never going to date a European guy again, or I'm never going to date an older guy again, or, like I wasn't linking up the correct cause and effect. And it was his behavior, like problematic behavior. So, and I see a lot of other people do this too, where they're like, well, I'm never going to date a redhead again, or I'm never going to date an attorney again. And it's like, no, it's the behavior. It's the abusive behavior. It's the problematic behavior that you need to avoid, not necessarily the profession or the color of hair or the gender or what have you. That woman that I was telling you about earlier that I met in the airport the other day and was telling me all about this intense story about how she was she's coming to Michigan to meet her birth mother, and she'd had this horrific life of abuse from her, just starting at birth, frankly. And, she was a product of rape, and her mother gave her up for adoption. And just so you know, at the end of our conversation, she told me, she's like, I want you to tell my story. I want you to help others. So please don't think that I'm just being very open with her story and that she is not okay with that. But, her mother had said, she couldn't keep her because she had the same eyes as the rapist. And so like from day one, it was just this feeling of there's something wrong with her, right? And so she gets adopted into this family that was incredibly abusive, and then had, I think 2 or 3 marriages with incredibly abusive, like very physically violent men. And she had linked up that men were pain. And so she even told me, she's like, you know what? I decided that she was done with men, that she was going to date a woman. And she did. And she said, you know what? That woman was worse than all of the men combined. And I've heard this many times from many different people where, because it's not the gender, it's the behavior. And that behavior, it can be, male or female, young or old, black or white, rich or poor, any religion, any nationality, anything. It's the behavior. So, yeah. Yes, I like that. D5054 says, when the narcissist knows they cannot get any supply out of you, they will move on. Well said. Yep, completely. Oh, I like that, Lauren. That's clever. She said, I've made a for when you miss them video, and I was able to get a lot more emotion in the video than I could put on paper. Of course, I still have the list on paper. Well, aren't you just 2016? Yes, yes. So I like that idea. I am going to use that idea. That's fantastic. Because yes, you can look at yourself and you can talk directly to yourself in that video and really tap into that emotion. And it's sort of like you're talking to your future self. I love that. So, Spirit's Art Attack says, being so trusting has left me in so much pain. What does a normal relationship look like? Oh, I think that's such a valid question, and it's such a... So let me, I think this is something that a lot of us have struggled with, okay? Because normal, that word itself is really loaded, because normal is very relative, right? And so if a person, so this is what I encourage people, don't aim for normal, because who knows what that is, right? Generally, normal is some like degree of dysfunction. So, and this was a lesson, it really took me quite a while to really wrap my mind around that. But because I had been dividing the world into like normal people and narcissists, like two very separate categories. And I struggled for a long time trying to figure out, well, where is that line? Like, I need to know, like, where is the line between like a normal person and like a narcissist? And the reality is that it's really not a hard line. It's not a hard and fast line, I should say. It's shades of problematic behavior. And this goes back to knowing what's deal breaker stuff for you. So I think there's a third category there between like normal and toxic, right? There's healthy. So I would aim for healthy, because frankly, anything less than that is going to cause you struggle and strife and hurt and heartache. So aim for healthy. So I can tell you what a healthy relationship looks like. And frankly, you will know what it looks like, and because you will know how it feels. That's probably the biggest sign. So when you're in a healthy relationship for you, you're going to feel calm, you're going to feel safe, you're going to feel nourished, you're going to feel nurtured, you're going to feel empowered and inspired, and you're going to feel freedom, like the ability that you're to be able to express yourself and to have thoughts and feelings, and to just to explore, like to be able to explore life and to be able to explore who you are. Like that really is kind of the core of a healthy relationship. And then also in part of that, it has to do with, open on it. It's based on dignity and respect. Always, always, always. I really strongly feel like there's no negotiating that. Like that needs to be present. If a person's not treating you with dignity and respect, then it's not a relationship. It's a manipulationship. It's a power and control thing. So based on dignity and respect, communication, it's open, honest, sincere, solutions-oriented communication. It's not anything less than that. So it's, being able to set boundaries, being able to tell a person. And it's so much easier to be open with the person when you feel safe with them, which takes time because, again, trust is earned, right? So if you're able to tell a person, hey, I'm not comfortable with this, or hey, let's try this, or let's talk about this, or you're able to have an opinion and you're paying attention to how your thoughts and opinions are being received by them. If you're in a safe place, if you're in a healthy relationship, then you're never going to you're not going to be belittled. There's no abuse. There's no abuse. There's no active addiction. There's no adultery. There's no, negative attitude. There's no gaslighting. There's no belittling. There's no, treating a person with a lack of dignity or a lack of respect. If that helps. So. And it takes time. And I think so much of it is realizing there are a lot of really good people in the world. There really, really are. And you are worthy. There are so many of them out there, and you are worthy. And this is your time. Like, this is your time to find you and to realize that you're worthy and that you're worthy of love and happiness and just everything amazing that life has to offer. And once you really start believing that, then the right people start showing up, because you know how it feels, how problematic people feel, how that problematic behavior feels. Like, you feel depressed and anxious and resentful and fearful and intimidated and angry and tense and on edge and confused. All of those uncomfortable feelings, they're uncomfortable, but they're uncomfortable for a reason. They're there to send a message of what you're doing. This is not for you. Like, something needs to get more into alignment. It's the coolest thing. Like, once you can really see your emotions that way, that they're like the rumble strips on the highway. So, like, if you've kind of gone over too far, and it's like, right? You're like, okay, something's really out of whack. Like, I'm losing sleep, I'm not eating, or I'm eating too much, or I'm stressed out, or I'm angry, or I'm confused. That's a sign to kind of something needs to get back into balance. And you will know if you've gotten things back into balance, again, by paying attention to how you feel. So generally, when things are in balance, you feel good. Like, you've got clarity, you're cool, you're calm, you're collected, you feel safe, like you're good. Yeah. Oh my gosh. April says, I want to get Frank to make a true facts about the narcissist. This is how the narcissists do. Would be funny as heck. Yes. So when I first started my blog, like I started a series and I ended up taking it down because like, my coping mechanism, my two main ones are sleeping and sarcasm. So, this topic there's a lot of people that are going through like a lot of really intense stuff right now. And I'm a handful of years out of mine. And so, like, it's just a fine line. Like, I don't want anybody to feel like I'm making light of a topic, or not taking it seriously, or not taking their situation seriously. So I ended up pulling it down. But I had a series on my blog for a while called, and this started in a support group, and I ran with it. Like, you might be a narcissist if. Like it was the whole Jeff Foxworthy thing. It was just, and it was just all of these sayings, like that, just the ridiculous things that narcissists do. It was really funny, but you know, it was like you might be a narcissist if you know, you accuse your girlfriend of cheating on you, but you're the one cheating on her, or like you might be a narcissist if you know, you just had kids so you could look like parent of the year. Or you might be a narcissist if, you know, you drain your husband's bank account and then accuse him of leaving you with nothing. Like, Phil, okay, Phil asks, Dana, please, I need some clarification on this question. Did my narcissistic parents work against me to take my child just to hurt me? Or was it because they needed someone to replace their source of supply? It's hard to say because I don't know your situation. I mean, it could have been a little bit of both. You know, I'm sorry that they did that. My goodness. Lauren says, I'm taking bigger strides to get away from the abusers, and I'm feeling more afraid, tearful, paranoid, and insecure. You know, I think that that's probably pretty common, strange as that might sound. You know, a lot of abusive people, especially if they are controlling. So, and I'm just talking here because you know, I don't know exactly like the specifics of your situation, but a lot of people mistake or confuse that controlling with caring, or yeah, they confuse the controlling with caring, and so there is a weird kind of sense of safety and security when you're with somebody that's incredibly controlling, because it can feel almost protective, but it's not. It's the exact opposite. It's actually very harmful. So when, and plus if this is what you've known, change is always scary. Always, 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 even if it's positive. So it's always scary and intimidating to do something new and to step out of our comfort zone, even if what's been comfortable has been abusive. So, you know, I would just encourage you to just realize that everything that you're feeling right now, it's very normal. It's so normal to have like a wide mix of emotions during all of this and after all of this, and that's just all part of it. And so, you know, to reach out if you're in a support group or if you're in therapy or if you're both, to talk to other people and to try to ride through those different emotions as best as you can, and to just to try to not, if you're having, a lot of people oftentimes they feel they struggle with feelings of like shame and embarrassment and guilt for feeling that way, for feeling paranoid or insecure or afraid or even loving that person and missing them. Like, what's wrong with me? Like, why do I feel this way when this person was so abusive? But you know, the reality is in our mind, like we were in a relationship. We didn't know we were in a manipulationship. And so we had bonds there. And it takes a while for those bonds, you know, to break. Oh, okay. Looks like Lisa might have asked a question, but I missed it. Yes, and I should have. Um, I'm sorry, repeated that. Yes. So the chat does go quick, and it's totally not you, it's me. I have to stop the chat when I am answering because it's moving and I can't like I can't read and think and talk at the same time. If you want, I don't know if can you copy and paste it, and I'll keep my eyes open for it. And if I miss it again, if somebody can make sure to try to get my attention as best as you can. And yeah, Cecilia, I agree. She says, I am actually grateful for my ex because without him, I wouldn't know what was really going on in my childhood, and I probably wouldn't have sought out help. That's exactly how I feel. Like I didn't connect the dots for like the longest time. I just thought these were all, isolated incidents in my life, and realizing hold on a second here. Ah. Boom. I got him. So, hey, Postmodern's here. Oh no, I think I just banned him, and I think she unbanned him and then got him for 300 seconds. That's funny. Gosh, we haven't had a troll here in a while. Oh gosh, what were we saying? Oh, okay, yes, the kind of connecting the dots with that. Yeah, it can be, and of course, this. When a person, I think, is far enough out of this, because it is hard when you're fresh out of this, like you are raw emotion, and it's really hard. Frankly, it's an important stage in healing. Like you're going to be raw emotion. That's totally okay. There's no need to try to like rush through that. It is, and it's so cliche, but it is what it is. And it's healing has its own time frame and its own way of coming about. And but in time, if maybe like a year or longer out, when a person, they can start examining. And again, I think it's easier to hear the stories of other people, because then there's not that like intense emotional investment in it. Like there's that emotional distance because it's not you. So like this is one of the reasons I'm so open about me and my life, because I think, and thankfully so many people have been willing to share a lot of their stories. They're on my website and within the support group, where it's so much easier to see what's going on in somebody else's life because we have that emotional distance than seeing what's going on in our own. But yes, for me, it was very much the same, Cecilia. It was realizing, oh my gosh, I had this unaddressed vulnerability that continued to be exploited time and time and time again. And once I realized that was going on, then I could work to not have that be such a major vulnerability. And then the problematic people, it was so much easier to walk away from it, because then I was like, oh, I get what's going on now. I get how they're getting into my life, And then too, kind of what we were talking about earlier with trusting people and all that is, once you get to the place where you're totally okay with walking away from something that's problematic, in not needing to justify it to anybody, not needing like a really concrete thing that you can point to and saying like, I'm going to stay in this until they prove to me that they're destructive or dangerous or deadly. Like you're leaving way earlier than that if something's not working for you. That can take practice, but man, it's a really empowering feeling to realize that you're in the driver's seat, and it's no longer, somebody tries to, again, like it's having the words for this, like knowing concepts like love bombing is freaking huge. So once you realize that this is a thing and it can happen, and if it has been happening to you, then when it happens again, you're going to be a lot more inclined to be able to spot it and to be able to distance yourself when that starts happening. So, oh, I just saw an interesting question here. Yep, yes, Elise, I agree completely. It's a lot of narcissists do use self-deprecation as a way to get supply, and they'll do that. They'll just be like, "Oh, I'm so fat," or I don't know. And oftentimes they'll pick things that they're really not sensitive about. Like, they'll just be like, "Oh, it's so difficult to be me," and they have this like amazing body, right? Or just whatever. And like they're fishing for compliments is what it is, because they're just so full of themselves and they just love. And that's another thing is oftentimes, especially if they're charming, it'll start off, those relationships in the beginning will start off with them giving you a ton of compliments and attention and affection, and then things slowly start to turn where next thing, all of a sudden, like they're kind of like needy and insecure and seemingly vulnerable, and here you are walking on eggshells and turning yourself into an emotional pretzel, trying to be like, no, you're so amazing, and don't you see it, and oh my gosh, and you're trying to build them up. But this is kind of the energy vampire, one of the many energy vampire parts of it all, where like you're now giving, and they're taking. And it's weird because it's sort of like, how did I get here? When in the beginning, it was so much attention and so much affection where, if you encountered that, it's like, oh my gosh, I feel so flattered. And is this what love is like? Is this what it's supposed to be like? And this is so amazing. And I've never had this before. And this must be what it's like in like the fairy tales and in the movies. And, it's like you won the relationship lottery, because it's like the fish just jumps in the boat. Like, boy, that's amazing. Like they're just all in within a week of knowing you. Like that's love bombing, where they're just so certain that they have met the perfect person, and you get the feeling that something's off. Like that's really immature, or boy, that's really moving fast, or like, But if you have low self-esteem, like I did, then it's the feeling of, well, what if I really am like this really great person, and I just don't see it because I have low self-esteem, and so I don't want to like walk away from this great thing because I have these self-esteem issues. Like I just need to stay in it and learn to appreciate a good thing, basically, and totally go against my gut instinct. I mean, my goodness, it's just when you're out of a relationship with a narcissist, it's just what's up is down and what's down is up. And it's really, really hard to try to navigate like what is going on and who is sincere and who is insincere. And, like all of it. And it just takes time. I encourage people, when you're, especially if you're fresh out, but like the first, for sure, don't date until you trust your judgment and you're okay enough with walking away from a situation that feels problematic. Because it's so easy to continue to get tangled up with different emotional manipulators, and there are so many of them out there. So it's really important that you are very solid grasp, you have your feet grounded, and like who you are, and that it's going to take some time after these relationships end. And so to just really move slow, try to keep things light. This is all part of your healing. It's okay. It's totally okay. This is part of it. And so keeping things light, I'm a big fan of meetup.com, and just kind of benching yourself. Like you're the coach and you're like, you know what, I'm just going to bench you. Like I'm putting you on the bench for a little bit and it's a timeout and you're not out of the game. Like you're just taking a timeout. You didn't do anything wrong, but you're an injured player. And so you just need a break, right? And so keeping things just really light, going to I'm a big fan of meetups, going to dinner, trying new things, meeting some new people, keeping it very, where's that thing? Keeping it very, somewhere between like here and here with people, and you're just keeping casual conversation, you're paying attention to how you feel, you're paying attention, you're just putting yourself out there again. You're realizing at any given point, if you're not okay with things, that you can get up and leave and that you don't owe anybody an explanation. These are total strangers. Like you're there to, I don't know, eat some Chinese food and go for a movie or something. And, you're just moving at a pace that you're okay with. And I'll tell you, because a lot of times, when a person's healing, emotional manipulators can just sense that vulnerability and that weakness miles away, it seems like. And so just reminding yourself, like, if it's the right person, then it's going to work in your time frame. Like you're not going to feel anxious or nervous or confused or, unhinged or any of those feelings. Like if you're not ready to date, you're not ready to date. And that's not the right person for you. Yes. Okay. Mark says, Dana, is it bad if a codependent gets involved with another codependent after being with a psychopath? It sounds very unhealthy and dead end. It could not really go anywhere healthy. Correct. Right? No, it can't. Because when you have, again, like I really like to think about, I need to print that up. I need to get like a handout of that. I like to think of it in terms of alignment. So if you think about it in terms of like an orientation of self, right? When you have like narcissism or to an extreme, like, psychopathy on like one end, and then on the opposite end of that spectrum, you have quote unquote codependency. Again, kind of labels aside, if you look at it in terms of you have people that tend to, the more, quote unquote codependent side, like overgive. And then you have people on the narcissistic side that overtake. And in the middle there is that alignment. And so if a person's out of alignment, their life is generally not working for them. And they generally know at some level that their life is not working for them, but they've probably gotten really, being uncomfortable and being off balance has been a normal way of being for them for a very long time. So whenever you've got, so remember I was talking about like there's there's three different groups. You have like toxic people, and then you have normal people, and then you have healthy people. Like healthy relationships only come from healthy people. And so getting it back into alignment where, you have this like authentic sense of self and you're living this authentic life. And this happens like, decision by decision. And it's the cool thing is, like I was saying earlier, it stacks on itself. So, and you'll be amazed. Like if you've been feeling out of alignment for a while, it is amazing how quickly you might not get, it does take time to get like really in alignment. And that's something that I still struggle with too. But like even making a difference of like 50% is life-changing, like an ocean of difference. And that can happen so quickly, so quickly, especially when you start paying attention to your feelings. And it's so cool to watch people when they start getting in alignment and they start really discovering who they are. And oftentimes it's for the first time. I didn't even realize that I didn't have this solid sense of self. And, you know, they're like, oh my gosh, here I am, I'm living this life. I'm a banker, but I really feel like my passion is teaching children. And that's more of the direction that I want to be in. And realizing it's just this ripple effect, and it's so many aha moments, and it's like these layers of like an onion, like they're just getting peeled back and peeled back and peeled back, and until they get down to like remembering like who they really are, like their authentic self. And it's the biggest thing in that is turning inward and paying attention to how you feel, and probably, you know, doing a lot of like journaling along the way, because it can be confusing and it can be overwhelming. But I would encourage you guys to try to release judgment about like what you're discovering about yourself, and to try to replace that with curiosity. Like, oh, isn't that fascinating? like I didn't realize that I think I've always wanted to play the piano. Like I should go explore that. Or here I am living in the mountains, and you know what? I think I really belong in a place that's more by the ocean. Like I think that's more my environment. Or, you know, here I am, you know, like I live in Michigan. A lot of people are like, I cannot handle the Midwest. Like it's really long gray days in the wintertime. They're like, man, I've been unhappy here my whole life, and I really feel like I need to go someplace sunny. They moved to Arizona or California, and a change of, more sunshine was exactly the place that they needed, the soil that they needed to grow. So it's just taking time to really get to know yourself. And once you are in alignment, then things really start to work. But yes, so when you have two people that are codependent, that generally doesn't work, because if you've got one person, they're like, okay, I'm used to being the one that gives and gives. And the other person is like, wait a minute, like I'm used to being the one that gives and gives. Then they're kind of like at an impasse. And especially if they're looking, if they don't know, if they struggle with giving love to themselves, and they're in this pattern where they're giving love to other people with the intention of getting it back. So that can be really true. I mean, ideally in a healthy relationship, there's that give and take, but there's not this like feeling of I've got to earn your love. Like I've got to just give and give and give, and I'm going to be like the best spouse or girlfriend or boyfriend possible, and I'm just really gonna just earn your love. I'm gonna earn your loyalty. I'm gonna prove to you that I'm worthy of you. Like that's problematic. That's out of alignment thinking. And, but once you start examining that kind of stuff and start taking steps, and again, like I feel, my guess is the people that actually have this figured out, the only reason they have it figured out is because they went through hell. Like, and they realized they got to the place where they're like, you know what, my life hasn't worked for so long that I realized I had to do something radically different. I really don't think that this stuff is taught in homes, even in healthy homes, because they tend to like not think that it needs to even be taught. But I think really it's, again, like I think estimates are something like as high as 85% of homes would be considered dysfunctional. Frankly, I bet it's closer to like 95, frankly. And if not even higher than that. Because this stuff is not taught. And the exact opposite is taught on TV and music especially, and movies and all of this. There's all these kind of like dysfunctional, like really, really damaging messages that have been feeding our brain from a very young age. And that has an effect on us, you know? And real quick too, I wanted to talk about what I had just said a little bit with the give and take of love. So when we're not giving a person love with when we're not trying to earn their love back, when we're just giving a person love with no expectation, like that really is, I think, like the purest form of unconditional love. And it's so empowering and freeing just to be like, oh, it so does not matter. Like, it's like giving a gift, right? Like if you really want to give a person a gift, it's not about that you're wanting to get something at the same value back from them. It's not about this creating like guilt or obligation, right? It's just like, oh, I saw this at the store and I thought of you and I wanted to give you this. Like that's it, right? You're just thrilled. It's like a little kid when they give you like a macaroni necklace, right? And it's just, they are just thrilled. And they're not doing it for anything other than like they made that for you. Giving that kind of love to fellow human beings, right? It's just like, oh, like we're on this crazy journey together. You know, we're on this giant ball spinning through the universe, you know, or rotating around the sun. Like it's just wild. It's just, all of this is just craziness. And we're all fellow travelers on this journey. And, you know, like, cool. Like, you know, just gonna love, man. Like it's gonna give you some love and there's no expectation. There's no anything. Because it doesn't, and when we give love without expectation like that, it's never wasted because it feels so good. It feels so good just sometimes to say a kind word or just show that you care to somebody else and realize that their reaction has nothing to do with you. Like it has everything. Everybody's reaction is never a reflection of the other person. It's always a reflection of us. So. Yeah. Yep. I like that. Postmodern saying, talking about problematic personality and she says, like I say, the person is condescending. Well, that's a trait of narcissism. Whether or not this person is narcissistic is none of my business, but I do know that they're condescending. Yep. And that's problem enough. That there's kind of, not kind of, like there's this, the challenge with all of this is like this semantics dance that we have to do with this different terminology, because it's not like, oh, it's so frustrating, because using the words like narcissistic or narcissist can be very clarifying and very validating for some people, but then other people it can cause more confusion and like hesitation, like I don't know if I really belong here, and like, is this person a narcissist? Like I'm not really sure if they're a narcissist, but I think they're kind of toxic, but I'm not sure, and maybe it's me. Like they keep saying it's me and maybe it is, and there's just all this confusion. But yes, if you break it down to the behavior, okay, this person doesn't need to be a complete psychopath. If they're draining, if they're draining to you at all, it's not healthy for you. Like it's not, that's enough. That's all it needs to be for you to not, to distance yourself. And physically or emotionally or kind of whatever that might mean for you, to whatever extent that might mean for you. There's so much freedom too in just realizing, you know, we can't change other people. Like, that's just like the hugest weight. It's like, just to be like, okay, yeah, like, just you're on your own path. Everybody's on their own path. And, highly problematic people oftentimes will make it seem like they need us. They need us to carry them across the finish line, right? That it's without them or without us that they're going to hurt themselves, or they're going to go back to drinking, or that's all manipulation. And it's a web of dysfunction. And it's like, well, then I guess you're going to have to go back to drinking, or I guess you're going to hurt yourself. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but I'm not going to be dragged through hell and be held emotionally hostage. Like, that's not going to work for me. So we all have choices. We all have consequences for those choices. And yeah, but I'm not playing that game. See that? Okay, so that's an example of a boundary, and a boundary that would probably really cause a lot of people to be like, "Wow, I can't believe she just said that. That's really harsh," right? And like, because people are like, "Whoa, wait a minute!" Like, no. Like, where's your compassion? Where's, we need to give and give and give, especially if that's been the role in our family, or that's been the role in that relationship. And when we start being accountable for our behavior, and then having them be accountable for their behavior, and realizing like, I need to do what I need to do to keep myself safe and sane, and like, you need to do what you need to do to keep yourself safe and sane. And I'm not gonna sink myself to save you. Like, that's a weird thing that's weird that anybody would even think that that's appropriate. Like, because it's not, right? But in a family, especially like in families or relationships, it's crazy how things can get so skewed and turned around. Ostra says, I feel like I was his only victim. He doesn't hurt anybody else. I highly doubt that. Because it's how they relate to the world. It's all about power and control. And it's the whole thing, like, wherever you go, there you are. And so wherever they go, they bring that power and control attitude and mindset with them. It's very common that when a person goes through an abusive relationship, that they feel exactly the way that you feel. They're like, wow, no, it's just me. Like, the first guy that I was involved in, I really fully believe that he was planning on killing me. And his best friend was a therapist who was a really nice guy, and he'd been a therapist for like 30 something years. So I really, really, and everybody loved him. He was incredibly charming. He was friendly. He was the kind of guy, he would plow the neighbor's driveway, all the neighbors' driveways in the wintertime. There was like 4 or 5 houses on this hill that we lived on. His dog was great. Like, he just was a really likable guy. And so I really felt for a long time, like, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just unworthy or unlovable. And like, I had a really, really, really hard time trying to figure out like how all those pieces fit together. And then when I ended up talking to his ex-wife, everything that he had told me about her was an absolute lie. And she went through very much like 95% of what I went through with him. So you might think that you're alone, but odds are you're not. That's a great point, Elise. Yeah, she says, people, like charming people. She said, yep, everybody here in Chicago liked John Wayne Gacy too. Yep, and Scott Peterson and Ted Bundy, and well, maybe Ted Bundy, was he charming? Who is the guy that I'm thinking of who was very handsome? He had brown hair. I forget his name. It might have been Ted Bundy. Yeah, I mean, like, Irene says, I just cannot let the person I met go, but I know I need to. And so I guess there's 2 things with that. I would encourage you to do some soul searching and figure out why are you hanging on? Like, what's driving that? Because that's a big part of it. Like, once you kind of can figure out, because it's not the person. It really rarely, there's a whole saying like, we're never upset for the reasons that we think. Well, it's also true, like, we're never like happy or in love or what have you for the reasons that we think. So it's always kind of like one or two levels deeper. So if we're having a hard time letting go of this person, it's generally not the person. It's deeper than that. So maybe it's the fear of like being alone or of starting over or just wanting some companionship or intimacy or any number of reasons. So it's kind of worth going a few levels deep and kind of saying like, what exactly, how do you feel? Like, what is the feeling there that's holding you to this person? Like, what's the connection? And then once you can identify it, if you're like, you know what, it's companionship. Like, I've just been really, really lonely. Yes, this guy is problematic, but I feel important, or I don't feel lonely. I feel that sense of connection. Once you're able to identify what it is, then you can work to fill that need in healthier ways. So if you're able to realize, okay, I'm feeling important and loved, then asking yourself, how can I feel important and loved in other ways that are good for me, that are nourishing for me? So maybe that's, spending time with animals, or spending time with, some friends, or spending time in nature, or kind of whatever that might mean to you. Or maybe it's all of the above, right? And so like you're spending time with nature and with animals and with people that you really feel that you enjoy being around, and you're just like really tripling up on that self-love, which frankly, I feel like we all could use, so myself included, and really tripling up on that. And then once we start filling that need in positive ways, it's like that clenching, holding on to what's not serving us, like it just starts to soften up, because it's like monkey bars, right? Like you're kind of like letting go of one, but like you're holding on to the next one, and it's just so much easier to let go of that one when you've got your hand gripped around the next thing. And then the other part to that too would be, if you're in a situation where you're like, you know what, I'm experiencing problematic behavior, and I don't quite know what your situation is, but if for those of us out there, or if you're out there and you're experiencing problematic behavior and you're like, you know what, I don't want to let go of this person, but I know I need to, you can also tell yourself like, well, you will eventually let go, but then it's a question of, well, how much pain do you need to experience in order to let go? And I think once you answer that question, and that's like, ouch, right? You're like, oh, okay. Like once you put it that way, like, okay, like, yeah, okay, how much pain do I need to suffer from this person? Like how uncomfortable and confused and jealous and insecure and anxious and depressed and unhinged, like how long do I need to feel like that? How intense? And at what point then am I going to be okay with walking away? Because when you're dealing with a problematic person, they only ever bring pain. So it's sort of like, okay, there's the pain of leaving now, or there's the pain of leaving later. Like when do you want to experience that pain? And sometimes I think it helps to kind of reframe it in that way. Okay, Cecilia's saying Ted Bundy was not attractive at all. I don't know who I'm thinking of. I'm going to have to figure it out. Oh, wait. Yeah. And, postmodern, okay, that brings up a good point. She says, yeah, I tried for 2 years with my ex-husband with Al-Anon, pastoral counseling, marriage counseling, and finally I had to ask him to leave. So, it does help to be able, if we do leave a situation, to be able to leave with as much clarity and validation as you possibly can get. So that way you're not wondering like, okay, could I have done anything more? So I encourage people, if you want to go, this is about you. Like, this is so all about you, okay? So trying to figure out, what do you need in all of this? And so if you do want to go for therapy, if you do want to talk to a minister, if you do want to, try Al-Anon or any of these things, trying to get it very clear in your mind, okay, how much time and energy and money am I going to pour into this before I walk away? Like, where is my line in the sand with this? And I think once you can kind of get clear, like, okay, there is a point that I have deal breaker behavior and I need to really figure out where that line is. So then I can know when I'm getting close to it or when I've crossed it. And so you can ask yourself, okay, if we're going to try these things, if we're going to go to Al-Anon and marriage counseling and all of these things, then what kind of changes do you need to see in order to keep going, or in order to stay in this relationship? What kind of changes do you need to see, and in what kind of time frame? So then because I think a lot of people, because we're so not wired that way, right? So like, it's weird for us, it's just weird for us to be like, I don't understand, like, what is the problem? Like, just quit yelling, right? Or quit calling me names. Like, I don't understand, like, why this is so difficult to just not call me names. Like, I've seen you not call me names before, so I know you have it within you, but yet, so it's difficult, and it can be a struggle for a lot of people, but it's so much more than them just not calling names. It's that mindset behind, it's that power and control mindset, and it's fueled by entitlement and justification, and that's a big tangled web to try to untangle. So okay, so yeah, what is the verdict? Oh, real quick, Matthew mentions yoga. I just saw for the other day, for the first time, there is a new yoga out there. I haven't done it, but I would like to, called trauma yoga. And it's helping people to kind of get back in touch with their, like, the whole mind body thing, which I think is really cool. So I bet that would be pretty powerful. That might be something worth, if anybody does try that, let me know. I'd be curious to see what you thought of it and just kind of more about what it's about. Yeah, postmodern. Okay. Yes. She says, in her case, my ex-husband accompanied me to therapy, but it really wasn't couples therapy. Okay. I'm not sure if you mean that it was more like individual therapy, or if it was, he just really wasn't like emotionally engaged in therapy. I had originally read that as he wasn't really emotionally engaged in therapy. I think, okay, yeah. Yeah, so that's the thing, right? Like, if a person's going to be in like just going to therapy and like sitting in a chair is not going to therapy. Like, that's going to pay to sit in a chair to just stare at somebody. Like, it's a big fat waste of time and money and energy on everybody's part. And so, really, like, going to therapy is it's taking like an active role in it. It's being, and it can be so tough, like to be open and to be vulnerable and to explore, you know, explore yourself is basically what it is in therapy. And that's one of the, with narcissists or with anybody on like that, narcissistic side, where they don't think that they have a problem. If a person doesn't think that they have a problem, sincerely, if they don't think that they have a problem, then they're so far away from even being open to working on anything. Like you're talking two different languages. Like they don't understand. So, yes, and many of them really do just manipulate. They're just master manipulators. They really, really are. So, with that said, what are you guys' thoughts? We had talked a few weeks ago about doing a book club tomorrow for Psychopath Free. And is anybody interested in doing that? It would be probably most helpful if you read the book. But not necessary. There's okay. There's my the only like online version of the book that I know of is on Amazon, like the ebook version of it. Lisa says, "Did you see my comments?" No, I didn't. Why do gosh. Oh, that's a good idea. One of many leaves says, "Oh, Dana, how about putting up a calendar on your site that you could update rather than having to create videos and send out emails?" Well, aren't you smart? Yes, I like that idea a lot, and I'm going to write it down if I can find a pen. Hold the phone. Let me write this down. Let's see. Calendar. That's what I was going to say. I love it. Cha. Lisa, I'm looking for, that's funny, one of many leaves. Okay, so the book Psychopath Free, people are asking about the word psychopath. That it's kind of a loaded term. So it used to be that sociopath and psychopath were two different terms. And in the DSM, they're not anymore. Some people, like I probably like criminal profilers and people that really, really, really like get into the specifics probably do separate them out, because there are some differences between the two of them. But they've been, at least in the DSM, they're lumped under the same name of antisocial personality disorder. So which is very similar to a narcissist. Frankly, I like to think of them as shades of the same color, because it's sort of like all sociopaths are narcissists, but not necessarily all narcissists are not necessarily sociopaths. But they have a lot of like overlapping problematic behavior. Like they both tend to exploit people, they manipulate, they deceive. I would say really the major difference in like the DSM is more like referring to narcissists as more grandiose. But personally, I really don't like that word, because I think it trips up a lot of people, because then they think that narcissists are this like over the top personality, and not all of them are like that. Like a person can be incredibly self-absorbed and come across in a wide variety of ways. They don't always come across as, Napoleon, like, or, Donald Trump. kind of that over the top kind of stuff. So that everything in that book, so I guess kind of to answer your question, everything in that book that they talk about psychopaths pertains to narcissists as well. It's any type of like toxic, crazy making, abusive person. It's all of the same behavior. It just kind of goes by many different names. So let's see. So let's do Psychopath Free tomorrow night. That'll be fun. And if you want to go to if you haven't read the book, or if you want kind of a rundown on the book. Oh, that's a good idea. Irene says the book is on Audible. That's so smart. Then you can listen to it while you're driving or walking on the treadmill, like I need to go do. Let's see. Postmodern. That's the word I'm looking for. Postmodern. You were saying that you don't get home until, I forget what time. Is it, can you post it again? I don't know, 6:30, did you say 6:30? I think if we met, okay, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time, which would be, my microphone, I forget. So what is that, 3 hours different? Is that right? So 10:30. How about if we do, that is late for everybody. Bummer. Okay, yeah, let's do, but let's try to figure that out. Maybe not for tomorrow, but in the future. Okay, that's for the future. Let's do same time, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow. Lisa, I'm going to scroll up right now and see if I can find them. Things get buried so quickly. So Psychopath Free, if you want to go on my website, thriveafterabuse.com, and go to book notes. You can see my notes on the book if you want just kind of a refresher. But it's one of those books. It's just he does a really great job of really describing just all the manipulations. That book is one of the books that I think most people you'll find in this whole healing community point to as like the kind of Rosetta Stone. Really helped them to just really piece things together and have that validation. Lisa, why am I not seeing your comments? Oh, okay. I see one. Is any talk of OTRS syndrome in here? Or Cassandra? I'm not sure what that means. Let me copy and paste, or copy that. Were there more comments than that, or was that it? So that's the only one that I can somewhat see. I don't. That's interesting. I have never heard of that. Okay, OTRS stands for Ongoing Traumatic Relationship Syndrome, aka the Cassandra or Cassandra phenomenon. It looks like it has more to do with autism. Thank you so much for bringing that to my attention. I am not familiar with that, which is like, I'm really shocked that I haven't come across that on many different levels. So I will look into no, like we haven't discussed that before, but I will definitely be looking into it for sure. So thank you for that. I love that. True Love. We'll end on that note because I like this. True Love says, it's good to watch comedy on YouTube and get out of your own head and thoughts in order to cope, and permission to take a break from the grief. Yes, I like it is. It is so nice to be able to just do that and take some time to decompress. So, okay, one more. Phil, real quick, says, Dana, there are some situations where you need to face down the narcissist. How is the right way to do that? The answer is always whatever you feel that you need to do in order to keep yourself safe and sane, ideally probably in writing, so it can't be twisted around. And yeah, and then figuring out like what that means in order to kind of get the result that you're trying to get. How do you need to go about kind of balancing that situation? So yeah, I would agree. Postmodern says, don't face down a narcissist. Yep. It's, like we were talking about earlier, it's like kicking a bee's nest. It just, they're not solutions oriented. So whatever you do is not going to end well. Like if it's something that's trying to draw boundaries with somebody, trying to call them out on their behavior, that only works if a person's solutions oriented. Like if they're highly manipulative and they exploit other people and they lack empathy and they lack remorse, they truly don't care. And then they just get irritated that you have a problem with them. So if they're abusing your child, then I would not confront them. I would try to get authorities involved. Yeah, Astra says, then you call the police. Yeah, because if you get involved, then it's it gets all twisted and turned around, and the next thing you know, you're the bad guy and they're the victim of you, and it does not end well. So keep everything in writing. I would get some sort of third party involved, whether it's the police, Child Protective Services, something. Phil says, I've tried, but they're part of the problem here in Canada. Yes, that might be the case, but the thing is, though, if you don't have like physical concrete proof, it's like trying to nail Jello to a wall, because they're so manipulative that and this is how they are. So it's like, it's just second nature. They're just very quick to react and have the perfect response and just blame shift and twist and turn things. So paper trail is I think anybody's best bet. So if you have any messages with them, getting them in text messages, getting them on voicemail, getting photos, keeping copies of emails, those kinds of things. Otherwise, then it's just your word versus their word. So, okay, guys, I gotta get to bed. And thank you all so much for being here tonight. And thank you for all the great questions and everything, the great support of each other. And welcome to everybody here that was new. And if you'd like to join us tomorrow for the book club review discussion of the book Psychopath Free, it's by Jackson Mackenzie. It's a fantastic book. Again, you can get my notes at my website, thriveafterabuse.com. And my name is Dana. And we do this every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a couple hours. And we'll see you then. Okay, take care. Lots of love to you guys. You are not alone. You are not crazy. And you really can move forward and heal from this. So take care. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.